talking about law-related things, and the Russia investigation certainly is law-related. And I'm curious to hear, after letting it decompress a little bit, letting a couple other Trump scandals, go through their motions, to have a sort of sober, dispassionate discussion, I hope, about the investigation and its implications.
Okay, and next I'm going to finish off on the lefty side with LSP, also known as Liberal Sanity Project, who runs a YouTube channel, who recently released, I think it was a few months ago, a really interesting video about the rise of ISIS that I really hope everybody can go check out for all the foreign policy nerds in chat. How you doing, man?
You thought that video was interesting? Why was that video interesting?
I think you gave a good perspective, and I think it was a decent summary of the history, because a lot of people don't know the roots of ISIS, and the founders of it. People just kind of know about it from 2016 to 2020.
Oh, okay. I guess that's why it was interesting. I'm all right. How are you?
Great intro. Do you wanna say anything? What you're about? What you do?
I make YouTube videos.
Well, isn't that what we're all going to be doing shortly, as we're all banned from Twitch? I'm going to throw it over now to Normal America, also known as Rob Noerr. Rob Noerr, I didn't know this. Have you been making the scene on the radio circle recently? I keep seeing that you're on the radio. How's it going? How's it going there?
Good. Yeah, I'm doing all right. I have usually on Saturdays between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern time here in Pennsylvania, 104.7 Talk Williamsport in the Williamsport, PA area. I'd love to have some more left-wing people on the radio show. I don't think we have a huge audience or anything, but one of the things, those of you that know me, I really want to support independent content creators on the left or the right. And so I think that sort of audience, the type of people that normally listen to radio, probably not listening to Twitch or YouTube very often. So I would like to see to let that sort of audience know, regardless if you're on the left or the right, there are independent creators out there for you online. So I'd love to have people on. Just a little about my show. My show's Normal America with Rob Noerr. I'm on Twitch, DLive, YouTube, and I have the radio show. I just got into this because I thought that normal Americans on the left and the right, and by normal I mean just average people, work 9 to 5, where people have kind of been left behind by our politics. And so I just try to break down stories in a way that average people that maybe aren't sitting there reading stuff 24/7 can understand.
Okay, wonderful. I'm happy to bring you back, Rob. Always happy to have you on the channel. I'm going to now throw it over to Dronetek, who I hope has fixed their audio issues, which has been incessantly bothering them as of late. I don't know if it's a CIA psyop or what's going on over there.
It could be. I think I'm good, though. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, as of right now, crystal clear.
Okay, well, that's because I turned off the software mixer, which was, I think, causing the problems. But thanks for having me here again. Yeah, last time I was here, I had a lot of audio issues with Mike, and hopefully don't have those again. But I'm basically here just, I love debating and discussing issues just for fun. And this one is a very interesting one to me because my channel is mostly focused on media bias, and generally, I don't really think it's a theory at this point. I think it's just common knowledge that the media is an extension of the Democrat Party. And so that's mainly what my channel is focused on. And that works into this because what went on with the FBI, with elements of the government, and with against the Trump administration would not have happened without the subterfuge provided by the media, continued subterfuge. So that's my focus. That's what I'm going to focus on tonight. I think I know this issue pretty well. But Robert Noerr is definitely somebody I think is one of the premier people on this issue. So I'll be here to help him, and I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun.
Wonderful. I'm going to make one last comment. LSP, my favorite item in your room is giving me a lovely message right now. It's your fan. How's it going? Is there anywhere you can do some work with that to maybe help with the audio mixing a little bit?
I could burn to death. Other than that, I'll just mute my mic.
Well, okay. If you can mute your mic when you're not talking, that'd be wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to go through the rules very quickly. Number 1, do your best to be polite. Now, I'm not going to dictate niceness. If someone calls someone else an idiot, I'm not going to step in and say, hey, that was very rude. We're not going to do that here. How dare you? And the reason why is I understand why that might be better for dialogue. I do think it does help people show, their position in a certain light. If I have somebody come on my show and call me an idiot 20 times while not making any good points, it actually doesn't make them come off very good. If someone was to do that on any stage, I don't think it would make them come off very well. So I think it's actually somewhat important to the conversation to actually show people for who they are. But there is a line where I will draw, and that is interruptions. If somebody is unable to speak and actually give their perspective, I will jump in. So if you interrupt incessantly to the point where I feel like someone isn't getting enough speaking time, I will jump in and say, hey, you got to stop that. If you don't after that point, I will start muting you. I am liberal with mutes. Everybody knows who's ever been on my show knows that I will mute people. So please do your best to not interrupt that much. Here's another rule. Do not @ people who are currently on the panel show in chat. I've seen it done before, and all it does is get people really heated and distracts them. You can @ chatters. If chatters ask you a question and want to respond to them, you can respond to them in chat all day long. Just don't @ anybody else who's on the show. Since this is a not a one-on-one, and this is a 2v2, if you feel like you haven't gotten a lot of time to speak and you don't really know how to maneuver yourself in this type of situation, this type of show before, because you're not been in this many situations before, raise your hand. I'll write your name down, and I'll try to drag the conversation over to you. Besides that, I can't think of any more rules besides there's been a new TOS update, and if you have yet to read it, basically it just says that we need to be very careful when it comes to threats of violence. Now, I don't think this conversation's gonna at all get to BLM or Antifa or talking about what should be done to rioters or what should be done to these people or that people, what should be done to... I don't think it's gonna get into that area. If it does, I'm going to drag it back very forcefully, and I hope that everybody generally knows Twitch terms of service and will behave. When it comes to that, I will have to mute you and kick you out of the room. If you do not abide by that, I would like to keep my Twitch channel. Is there any questions about moderation style? Anything like that? Nope. Okay. Then the first thing we're going to be doing, as was agreed upon and requested by certain parties involved, is a 2-minute period to introduce the topic. I think actually it'll be 2:30 because I think people specifically were debating 2 or 3 minutes. So each of you will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to introduce your position on the topic. And traditionally I start on the left, and I've been noticing that. I think that might be a little bias on my part. So this time I'm actually going to start with the right. I'm going to actually start this time off with Dronetek. You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to use this time as you will. If you want to talk about ice cream flavors, you are allowed.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot I got to hit my button. So yeah, I spent most of the day with my kids and getting my video for today ready. But I'm pretty well read on the topic. I've watched all the hearings and all that. So basically, I'm here to defend the position that it was an attempted coup. I think it was, and I think that if the positions were flipped, it would be no question because the media would be trumpeting it. The Republicans would be the bad guys and be like, this is just what you did, you treasonous bastards. But because the situation's flipped and the media is in the tank for the other side, it's this big, it's just left out there like nothing bad happened. But it's all there. There are prosecutions at this point. Hopefully there's more. There's plenty of evidence that there was corruption involved, which I'm sure we'll go over all of that tonight. And I'm also going to get into the media and how I think they've basically provided subterfuge and allowed this to happen. So that's going to be my position. I think Robert's basically going to handle it, but I'll be here to help him, and that's what I'm here for.
Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it over to the other conservative, Rob Noerr.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So, yeah, I had said back in October 26 of 2017 that if an unverified opposition research was used to spy on a presidential campaign, that it was the biggest political conspiracy and scandal in the history of this country. Since then, we found that not only was that the case, but it's so much worse than that. We have evidence of the bias of the FBI agents at the very top that were biased against Trump. We have evidence how they were investigating the Hillary Clinton campaign. And in the only investigation that I know of in history, they basically gave everyone immunity, smashed all the evidence, and then asked them if they wanted to cooperate, which they said no. Simultaneously, they approached the investigation into Trump and his team in the exact opposite way, going years back, investigating lawyers in the middle of the night, dragging people out, looking decades back at financial records to find any crime because they wanted to engage in a coup against Donald Trump. If you think that foreign interference is a big deal, there is no country on the face of this earth that would have a more impactful interference into our elections than our own intel agencies. So if Russia, China, North Korea, Iran all combined to interfere in the election, it would pale in comparison to the damage the interference by the CIA, the FBI, and the State Department could do if they chose to interfere, which they did. Evidences came out just in the past couple of weeks that Hillary Clinton was directing this, that even John Brennan briefed Barack Obama. We found out today that he knew that Hillary Clinton was going to try to smear Trump as colluding with Russia. The hero of the left, Mueller, conclusively proved that there was no illegal conspiring in the 2016 election between Trump and Russia. We know that the FBI lied over 17 times to get a warrant to spy on Trump campaign people and thereby have access to all of Trump's information. This was a coup attempt that is ongoing. And if people aren't brought to justice over it, it will never end. This should concern people on the left and the right.
Okay, now we're going to go to the left side on this, which is going to start with Pisco.
Sure. So I think you can separate this event into numerous questions. The first question is, did the Russians, in fact, interfere in the election? The Mueller reports and others suggest that they did so primarily in two ways: by information warfare through a social media campaign, and by an actual hacking campaign and dissemination of that hack materials. No one on this panel, I think, and no one seriously disputes this determination that they did in fact do this. Practically the entire United States intelligence community agrees with this. The Obama administration agreed with it. The Trump administration did. FBI Director Wray has acknowledged it. Attorney General Bill Barr has acknowledged it. Senate Intelligence Committee has acknowledged it. The House Intelligence Committee has acknowledged it. The only one who seems to equivocate about it at all is Trump himself, who in a Helsinki meeting with Russia and the United States, a summit, questioned whether or not this was true, saying that he likes President Putin. He has great confidence in intelligence people, but I will tell you that, quote, President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial. But other than Trump, I don't think anyone denies the fact that Russia did in fact interfere or attempt to interfere in the election. Therefore, today I don't want to hear any disputes or questions about conspiracies, about CrowdStrike, about the deep state faking Russian involvement. We all agree on the premise, I think, that Russia did in fact interfere or attempt to interfere in the election. You might hear, and I think you have already heard, idle talk about, well, was this wrong or does it matter? Well, many of these acts were crimes and were charged as such during the Mueller investigation. Right there, I think that's the sign of the investigation yielded some results. Maybe you don't care about the laws that are broken with respect to private property and the email server. I care about private property, so I care when the people break those laws with respect to private property. Maybe you don't care about federal election law and foreign lobbying reporting and foreign influence. I care about those laws, and I care when they're broken. You know who else cared? The framers of this Constitution. If any of you read the Federalist Papers, they talk ad nauseum about foreign influence. It's all they talk about is about the government being co-opted and disturbed by foreign powers. It's a distinction that matters and is one that I think shouldn't be cheapened by reference to the potential for domestic agencies to subvert the election even more. No one denies this fact, but foreign influence is a special, I think, concern of the framers and us today. And you know what's not a defense? That everyone does it. One, it's not true. Not everyone interferes in every election. We don't do it to every single foreign actor. And whether or not it were true, whether every country did it, it doesn't make it better. Just because everyone does murder doesn't mean that murder is okay. I'll talk at length about the allegations regarding impropriety in the investigation, but seeing I'm over my time, I'll leave it to Liberal Sanity Project.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to pass it to LSP.
Hi. There are three questions this debate seeks to answer. One is whether Russia interfered in the 2016 election and to what extent. Two is whether Trump, his surrogates, or his campaign were wrongful at all in their conduct, legally or ethically, with respect to that interference. And three is whether the investigation into Trump and his campaign and Russia had corrupt motives or procedural defects, and whether those matter to our ultimate legal or ethical conclusions. This debate must be dictated by the facts. What is going to be offered by our opposition is a series of non sequiturs and politically motivated muddying of the waters. Rob Noerr has already told us that he only cares to the extent that the FBI also look into China and Google and the UK and Iran and Israel, all for election interference. He's going to tell you that rather than concern yourself with the Russian government's hacking of the DNC, that one should be focusing whether or not the Obama administration spied on the Trump campaign and used the FBI to take down Trump and his team. is going to wield you this narrative of silly distractions and baseless conspiracy theories. Do not let him do it. The question we're here to answer is whether Russia interfered in 2016. They did. The GRU hacked the DNC and the DCCC and John Podesta's emails and coordinated releases of those hacked materials through WikiLeaks to influence the media coverage of the election. The next question, did Trump or his satellites act illegally or unethically with respect to this interference? They did. The Trump campaign knew that Russian hacked emails were provided to WikiLeaks, and Trump's surrogate, Roger Stone, coordinated with WikiLeaks to release those emails to damage Hillary Clinton. The campaign also directed and condoned Roger Stone's actions. Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort provided internal polling data to Russian intelligence officers. And Trump's senior campaign staff met with Russian agents in Trump Tower on the premise of receiving dirt on Hillary Clinton as part of Russia and its government's efforts to help his campaign. Trump publicly called on Russia to hack Hillary Clinton, and on that same day, a hacking attempt was made. Yes, the Trump campaign behaved unethically. The final question, did the investigation into Russia have corrupt motives or procedural defects? The answer is no. The Investigator General report found no evidence of political bias in starting the investigation or in handling the investigation, and neither did the Senate committee report looking into it. What impropriety they did find was limited in scope to procedural errors and have no bearing on the validity of the investigation itself. Everything I have stated to you are facts taken from the Mueller report, the Senate Intelligence Committee report, and the Investigator General report. All Republican-led reports freely available for you to watch. Freely available for you to read. These are the facts that they establish. So do not let the opposition stray you from these facts. Russia interfered. It was serious. Trump acted improperly, and the investigation was valid.
You stopped literally at the last second. Pinpoint accuracy. I'm going to make one comment because I keep getting added in chat. I am aware of Stephen Miller's COVID test results. I'll talk about it another day. It's unrelated to what we're talking about. Just wanted to tell chat that. Okay, so we're now going to go into an open format. You can respond, go back and forth. If this goes perfectly, I shouldn't have to say anything for the next 1 to 2 hours. You may talk freely.
Yeah, I have one. Can I?
Yeah, sure.
I have one major question for the opposition, because the you guys pretty much presented the narrative I thought you would immediately present, which is that this was an attempted coup against Donald Trump's White House. The Mueller's team was appointed by Republican Rod Rosenstein, who was appointed by Republican Jeff Sessions, who was hired by Republican Donald Trump. And the investigation was spearheaded by Republican James Comey. And the Investigator General report that cleared them of any political bias was written by Republican David Horowitz. Who's trying to coup who here?
I mean, this is a nonsense point. First off, just because someone's a Republican, for example, Jeff Flake's a Republican, John McCain was Republican, just because they're Republican doesn't mean that they can't be actively seeking to diminish. In fact, I would say that the establishment Republican and Democratic Party have an interest in keeping the hegemony and power that they have and keeping all potential outsiders.
Well, what about Sessions?
Right. Sessions recused himself because he was forced to by corrupt left-wing groups that said that he had to recuse himself.
Wait, that's our first point of disagreement. So should Sessions have recused himself?
No, he shouldn't have.
Why not?
Because he had dinner with a Russian one time.
Well,
that's not a reason a member of Trump's campaign.
That's not why. He's a member of Trump's campaign, right?
Right.
The investigation is about Trump's campaign. You don't think it's proper to recuse yourself in that instance?
I will ask you if I don't think that he should have to. I think the precedent was set. For example, Loretta Lynch was tasked with investigating.
He doesn't have to, right?
Excuse me. Loretta Lynch was tasked with investigating Hillary Clinton and her email server. She was the person who would have ultimately made the decision. Yet she met in secret with the husband of Hillary Clinton on a tarmac. Yet she refused to recuse herself.
Is this whataboutism?
But Jeff Sessions. No, that's not whataboutism. I'm saying the precedent was set. The precedent
holding you
was
to your own
set.
standards is whataboutism. Okay.
Right.
Why is it
the precedent was?
So I could criticize the propriety of that meeting or any number of meetings or the lack of recusal by one doesn't go to the proper recusal of one other. So I'm asking you again, as a sort of substantive matter, was the recusal, regardless of the hypocrisy that you allege, correct?
No, it wasn't correct. because there were other people. There was no reason that Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, should have to recuse himself. The precedent was set in the previous administration, and no one had a problem with the fact that the Attorney General, unless they are directly implicated in a scandal, and to what I believe, I don't think having dinner with a Russian person once does not mean that you should have to recuse yourself.
No, that's not the scandal. The scandal was the termination of James Comey. Right, Jeff Sessions was the one who wrote Ron Rosenstein, his deputy, was the one who wrote the letter justifying the termination of James Comey. And the reason Trump provided for this was, to his words, was because of this Russia investigation. So that's the scandal that Sessions was already involved in.
Why would Sessions have to recuse himself as opposed to Rod Rosenstein then? So if Rosenstein wrote the memo to fire Comey, shouldn't Rosenstein have been the one that had to recuse himself?
No, the recusal happened before that, right? So the recusal
That's right.
happened.
But why was Rod Rosenstein, if he's the one who wrote the memo to fire Comey, why was he the one? But I'm asking you, you just said LSP just implied that because someone wrote the memo to fire Comey, that would justify some sort of recusal. So why was Rod Rosenstein the one who appointed Mueller?
Because Rod Rosenstein is a law enforcement officer for the United States, and Jeff Sessions was a member of Trump's campaign.
Jeff Sessions was the head of the Department of Jeff Sessions was the head of the Department of Justice.
That's correct.
And again, we get the double standard is clear for all to see. Now, if I could get to a question,
Eric Holder called himself Obama's wingman.
Wait. I'm not interested. Imagine in a vacuum, right? So imagine different sets of facts. Imagine there was no hypocrisy. Imagine just a sort of blank slate, right? You have one attorney general, we'll call him Attorney General X, and he had a position on a campaign that's being investigated by his Department of Justice. In a tabula rasa world, isn't it proper to recuse yourself if there's even the appearance of a conflict of interest?
No. Why didn't Eric Holder recuse himself?
The reason is because then all you would have to do is to make an accusation of your opponent, and you would render their attorney general meaningless. Why not? I could say that I think whoever Joe Biden appoints as his attorney general, if he wins, was involved in some sort of corruption in the Ukraine.
Should an attorney general recuse themselves? Should attorney general ever recuse themselves?
If there is evidence that they're directly implicated in a crime that they themselves are being investigated.
Implicated. That's it. So directly implicated in a crime. You don't think the appearance of impropriety matters at all?
No, I would say if that's something that you're going to hang your head on, you're going to have a very difficult time.
Then what should Loretta Lynch?
All the FBI agents that were that easily gave the appearance of bias, talking about insurance policies and things like that. And let me also say real quick, and then I promise I'll answer. This is completely irrelevant to the entire topic of the debate. I understand that you won't be able to win this substantive issue of this debate, so you're going to try to deflect in something that literally should. This is where you want to focus. Should Jeff Sessions have recused himself?
Well, you brought it up.
No, we didn't. I never once said
Jeff.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
You brought it up as a defense.
No, I didn't.
You started off with Jeff Sessions.
I never mentioned him. You guys mentioned him.
The accusation was that this is a big fix. And
yes,
you were presented with the information that, well, no, just because you're a Republican in name doesn't mean that you support the president. And I gave you the example of Jeff Sessions, who was appointed by the president.
Okay, but he had nothing to do with the investigations. Well, now, you said James Comey James Comey's a Republican. Are you seriously going to sit here and argue that James Comey obviously doesn't have animus against Donald Trump? Is that going to be your argument? If he's a Republican, he must have liked Trump. That's seriously your argument?
So my argument is, So the argument isn't that just because you're a Republican, you can't have political motivations behind an investigation. I think that it is true what you say, that it's possible within the same party to have political animus. There's these parties aren't these one totalizing things that can't have
Democrats.
I think there's dissent within Democratic ranks as well. AOC doesn't get along with establishment Democrats. Everyone knows.
What happened to Joe Lieberman when he left the party? But go ahead, or when he parted with the party.
This is irrelevant. Once again, non sequiturs. Like I said in my opening, we'd be chasing non sequiturs.
Rob did talk about the actual issues instead of Jeff Sessions.
Okay, but the point being made is it's an awful hard conspiracy to substantiate if members of Trump's own administration, his own appointees, forget about Comey, forget about the other Republicans. If you want to discount them, fine. But, his own director of FBI, his own attorney general, now Bill Barr, recognizing the magnitude in some respects of the Russia investigation. It's an awfully, I think, weird conspiracy if people you nominate yourself.
Let's establish can we just stop all this and then just establish, as far as Russian interference goes,
Mhm.
what was that? What was Russian interference?
Okay, that was gonna be my first question. Yeah.
No, wait, Dronetek, before we get there, let me say this. First, Pisco said no one would disagree with the claims he made.
Yeah.
I disagree with point one. So you said that there were two examples in the Mueller report of Russian interference.
Well, no,
the
so
one
two patterns.
One
Yeah.
was the Internet Research Agency, right? Are you aware of the fact that Mueller dropped those charges, that a judge admonished them because there is no proof offered by the FBI or Mueller that they were actually working on the behest of Putin's government?
1 second. So one thing is criminal charges, right? Criminal charges is a different standard of proof to
Sure.
bring
So
criminal charges.
so then, in your own words, show me in the Mueller report where they proved that the Internet Research Agency, these Russian trolls, were agents of Putin. Can you show me anywhere in the report where there was proof of that?
The report isn't evidence, right?
They're not trying to prove anything.
The report is in all sense of the word, for the most part, hearsay, right? It's all it's referencing evidence that
give me any evidence that the Internet Research Agency were Kremlin
Why
operatives.
is Rob's video so bad?
So what I'm trying to explain to you is that the report isn't evidence, and you would never present it as evidence. It is much of that evidence is classified. Much of it is like in hundreds of hard drives and millions of documents that we don't have access to, and we shouldn't have access to.
Would a judge that was looking at the case have access to that evidence?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay,
Depends.
so when the judge admonished Bob Mueller and Bob Barr and Bill Barr and said that you have zero evidence that the Internet Research Agency was operating as official agents of the government of Kremlin.
I haven't heard this. Can you provide this citation?
Yeah, I don't know what your references to. If it's with respect to a criminal charge, it would be to I don't know in what respect, what criminal charge you're referencing, because it would have to be with respect to a particular person or entity that's being charged with a criminal offense.
Right. This was the Internet Research Agency, who were the Russian trolls. They literally dropped charges against them because there was no evidence.
You're telling me
against the Internet Research, the 12 Russian trolls.
So
the people you cited as being trolls in your opening statement.
So
it's in the chat.
Again, like a criminal proceeding involves a particular criminal charge against a particular entity. Are you telling me that there was a criminal charge against Internet Research Agency for something and it's being dropped for some reason?
Yes, 12. Okay. Were you not aware that the Mueller report said that there were 12 Russian trolls operating on the behalf of the Kremlin that put disinformation on places like Pokemon Go, Facebook, right? Yeah. That's what they said. And now they've had to drop those charges because a judge said that they had no proof. You know what their proof was? I'll tell you. Spoiler alert, they were Russian. That's the proof that they must have been working for the Kremlin, because they were Russians that posted memes.
Couple things, right? So one is, first of all, I would like a source to that decision by the judge. It's in our chat. Okay, I'll take a look.
And
I don't know what she's talking about.
If possible, I think chatters in my chat would appreciate if all sources, if you have the time. If not, you can send it to me and I'll do it. It was also posted in Twitch chat.
Okay. All about sources, definitely.
You from your chat to the Twitch chat, because I'm not watching your Twitch video, unfortunately.
Sure, I'll do that.
Thanks.
Okay, and then second of all, you've noted that you are calling into question whether or not Russians instituted an information warfare campaign. You're denying that they did.
No, that's
information.
I'm saying you right out of the gate, you say, well, clearly Russia interfered, and here's the two types of things.
Stop. We had a conversation before, and I asked if you conceded that they attempted to interfere in the election, and you said yes. So I assumed. So it's actually like less worse for them just to engage in the social
why
media
I wanted
campaign.
to get interference really was. This is why I wanted to do that.
Okay, so that's a good question then. So I think it's actually like less bad that the Russians have a social media campaign than they like interfere in someone's property right for the
like
right. So like if you're not even granting them like the lesser of the offenses, how like what you think they just did the greater offense?
Well, no, the problem is what you're saying is they interfered, therefore the investigation is justified. But we can see that countries interfere all the time. So just because I can acknowledge they interfered doesn't mean that the specific accusation. Listen, I'm getting there. That doesn't mean that
you're jumping around, right?
No, I'm not. I'm telling you, you can't just say Russians interfered. That's the end of it. Well, everything's justified. They interfered.
No. This is the first is they could have interfered, and maybe the investigation isn't justified, right? That could be a case, right? So the first question is...
Wait. Did you read this?
No, I didn't read it. I didn't look at it.
Okay, what I'm reading, so just real quick, from what I'm reading, is one of these agencies, Concord Management, that was charged with Mueller. They were worried that Concord would use the indictment process to obtain classified material that was part of like the charging documents, and they wanted to drop the charges because they were worried that they would publish sources or sensitive investigative materials online because they're an arm of the Russian government. Like that's literally like in the
That's
third
so
paragraph,
different.
dude.
So one thing is, like,
I'll find the source. A judge admonished them and said that there was no evidence whatsoever that he asked the FBI repeatedly, can you provide the evidence that these people were actually agents of the Kremlin?
Gave them a while.
Just Russians? U.S. Judge, I'll read it here. I'll put this in the chat. U.S. District Judge Dabney Friedrich unsealed her July 1st ruling on Monday night, agreeing with attorneys for Concord Management and Consulting that Special Counsel Mueller's mentions of the case in his long-awaited report could unfairly prejudice a jury. Owned by Russian oligarch Priskitov, Concord is the only defendant named in the February 18th indictment. The company will go on trial in Washington and for the Internet Research Agency. For the defense of Dubler with Reed Smith, the twin actions of the Mueller report and Barr's press conference about it served as a sword and prejudice against Concord. I'll put the article, but it says
different.
It says that there is no proof, right, that it's prejudicial because the FBI offered no proof that they were agents of. I'm just asking. You said if there was proof that this was an interference by the government of Russia, show me any proof.
Wait.
Show me.
So one thing is the rules of evidence, right? So certain things that aren't substantiated, right, could be prejudicial to defendants especially if it's low relevance, right? That has to do with particular proceedings in a particular criminal court, whether or not they brought evidence to substantiate as an evidentiary matter their claim, right? That's different.
Sure, but I'm asking you such a low bar. Give me any evidence. It doesn't have to be evidence that would go up in the court. Give me any evidence that the Internet Research Agency, these trolls, were operating.
Wait. So you are denying that the Russians had a social media campaign in the 2016 election? Are you denying that? Are you saying it's my duty to prove it? I was saying it's an assumption because we agreed that it's an assumption. But if you want me to prove it, we can do that.
I am saying there is no proof that just because someone's Russian
we're gonna have is like
operating as a Kremlin agent.
That's not what I asked.
Wait. I didn't get to hear what Rob Noerr got to say because of what LSPs were saying over him. Rob Noerr, can you please repeat that?
Heard him yet. He's been yelling for the last 4 hours.
Well, I would like to hear it again. Apparently, it was not clear.
I'm saying that just because someone's Russian doesn't mean that that's proof that they were operating on
no one says that. That's not what's alleged.
So then, real quick, then when you all say Russians interfered, you literally just mean people that happen to be of the nationality Russia interfered.
No. That's not what we mean.
Holy shit.
We mean the Russian state, the Russian government.
Therefore, give me evidence that the Internet Research Agency is part of the government of Russia.
Look, short of finding like a written order from Putin himself saying go fuck with the election, the best we're going to be able to provide you is the Senate report. Oh, by the way, controlled by Republicans, which say this exact same thing. The Mueller report, also controlled by Republicans, which say this exact same thing.
Also,
tell me any evidence in either of those reports that show
a lot of the evidence
that show that they're Kremlin
evidence, right?
What evidence would you like? Like a camera, like installed in the like?
So a lot of the evidence
from the FBI saying that we saw intercepted communications or emails from the government of Russia and this organization.
Rob, this isn't a trial, so this isn't evidence, right? The report isn't evidence. These reports are findings from bodies who've seen evidence. We haven't seen a lot of the evidence. Why? Because a lot of it is.
Thank you very much. And that's the addition. You have no evidence. That's the addition. Then provide your evidence.
No, but no evidence of anything.
That's what it's like in like every criminal matter, right?
Okay, but can you just admit that?
No. It's not something to admit. It's something freely expressed that the Mueller report is hearsay, right? It's an out of court statements.
It is the findings of a party tasked with investigating.
Correct.
Short of us investigating ourselves, which we're not going to be able to do because we don't possess the powers of law.
I don't have a hard drive.
It's the best we're going to be able to provide you. Now, if you want to say the investigators were wrong, that's fine. But don't defer to the Mueller report when you want to say it exonerated Trump either.
Well, there's two things of evidence, right? There's two
when you like it. And
this is why I don't like this argument because to me it's like pointless. Because look, the interference, was. What? It was Facebook ads, $100,000 in Facebook ads, right? And then some rallies. And then what else? What was there besides that?
Wait, hacking of the DNC and John
Podesta? Yeah, that right. Okay,
so the use of WikiLeaks to disseminate harmful information to game the election.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we have Facebook, we have Pokemon Go, we have the hacking of the DNC servers. Okay, so
Are those
first
real?
of all,
First of all, do you agree that they're real? That's what I want to get.
I'm fine with that because
Are
the
you
same
fine?
thing happened.
Is it real or not?
Hold on. Yes, it's real.
Okay.
And whether or not it was Russia, I don't
I'm
really care.
not going to make that.
Okay, well, hold on. Let Robert.
Oh, Rob, you're not going to concede that. Okay. That's why I thought we would start off.
Well, to me, it's almost like a red herring because we're being hacked. We're like everybody's interfering.
Well,
no. God damn it. No. Firstly, not everybody's interfering. Secondly, just because people do interfere doesn't mean you have to like fucking not investigate it or not get to the bottom of this fucking interference.
So
the question
during the Bush administration, WikiLeaks was used to disseminate hacks of GOP emails and
once again, we're chasing non sequiturs.
Okay, it's not a non sequitur because that was never this big scandal. So why is it like the media freely reported that? None of this ever came into this. Never any Russia. No, it's not a non sequitur.
Holy shit!
So the question right now. Wait, Rob. Right, I just want to get the question. The question isn't: is there hypocrisy? Is this double-sided? The only question right now is factual. Did it happen? And that's what I'm asking, right?
Right. So, did they buy Pokemon? Did they interfere in Pokemon? Did they buy Facebook ads? Did they run rallies at the mass media?
I do not agree with Dronetek here. I do not agree with
okay,
there is no evidence whatsoever that the Kremlin government, I'm willing to see the evidence. Dronetek's right that these supposed interference. So we're going this case by case. One, the first evidence you gave was the things that they put memes, things like that. I agree with Dronetek that these weren't impactful whatsoever, but I've yet to see any evidence provided by you.
What evidence?
Real quick.
There is evidence. Wait, there is.
Be careful with evidence.
I'm never going to talk. Holy shit.
So there's two definitions of evidence. One is as a term of art in law, right? Evidence needs to be presented in order. It needs to go through the rules of evidence, the federal rules of evidence. I'm not a lawyer,
dude. I'm not going to be able to like go on your like
term
of like fair term.
What I'm saying is that kind of evidence hasn't been presented to the general public because it's not for us to decide. It's on a bunch of hard drives. It's hundreds of documents. It's interviews. It's going to be in court testimony to the extent there is in court. That's evidence, right? And then there's evidence in like a layman's sense, which is what we're dealing with. So be careful which one you're talking about.
Evidence. Give me your layman. That's what I'm asking. Give me your layman evidence that these internet trolls were directed by the Kremlin government.
I'm not disagreeing with Robert. I'm just kind of giving that up because I feel like it's
okay.
They don't have any. They don't have any.
And I'm going to let LSP talk because I'm sorry talking too much.
Go ahead, LSP. Give me the evidence.
I just want to say one thing and then I'll let him talk. All right. So the evidence that we have is like the entire United States government and apparatus saying it happened. That's the evidence we have. Right? So
said Iraq had nuclear weapons.
Oh, for fuck's sakes! I challenge you guys.
Oh, for fuck's sakes, they did.
I challenge y'all. Shut the fuck up, dude. Shut up. I challenge y'all.
Did they or did they not say that?
Shut the fuck up. Please shut the fuck up. I challenge y'all to stay on the Mueller report without bringing up something that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or how the FBI acted with impropriety.
You would love that because it absolves you of all hypocritical double standards.
No, because it stops us from going down these silly distractions.
Now listen, what Dronetek's trying to say, if I could make this, is later we will get to the question. We will get to the question of whether or not this investigation was illegitimate. Later we'll get to the question of whether or not it's okay.
I'm sorry, dude.
It will be important then at that point to discuss. Part of the thing that we can determine whether or not it was legitimate is if similar actions occurred in the past. Did the FBI investigate?
This is literally the science is a liar sometimes argument. I don't know what to say.
I'm more than happy to engage with those questions at that time.
The science of the times always align with your party. How convenient.
I'll wait until.
Okay. I do want to give LSP some time to talk, and I'll throw it back to Rob Noerr because LSP has been trying to talk
for like 4 hours now. Yeah. So here, you want some evidence? The Mueller report lists some evidence. Not all of it is classified. Some of it consists of the fact that like the IP addresses with which certain domains like DC Leaks or Gucci for 2.0 were registered with were domains associated with Russian intelligence farms. Like shit like that is the evidence that the Mueller report lays out. So there's some of your evidence right there. You could just read the report.
You can't.
Okay. So I know this. Now it's funny because for LSP,
somebody can like.
Excuse me. I give you a chance to talk. You're going to say we need to stick to these issues. I agree. We'll stick directly to the issue. So the issue we're on right now is the Internet Research Agency. That was one of the two things that Mueller said was the interference of Russia. I said, show me your proof that they worked as Kremlin agents. You have zero proof, and you immediately go to the hacking.
Wait, no.
Provide me any proof. Then provide me any proof in the Mueller report or anywhere else, any proof whatsoever that says that these Russian trolls operated on behest of the Russian
I
government.
literally just provided you some.
You talked about Gutenberg and the hacking.
The IP addresses.
You want to
That's
talk?
what he
Yeah,
said. It's evidence.
The registration of the domains used to leak out this information were associated with Russian
I
intelligence.
mean, my only thing would be, why would they do something so obvious?
But again,
I'm an IT guy. I'm an IT guy.
I don't know why, dog. I don't know why.
I'm an IT guy. My very first question is
I don't
like,
know why.
why would they do that?
Nor
Why
a
would
lot
a
of this
premier
information.
intelligence agency do
Nor,
that?
a lot of the information.
And this is what you see oftentimes when it comes to this. That people just give this laundry list. They say, "Look at the things Russia did to interfere." I'm like, okay, let's give them one.
When
I
Rob,
a lot of
Okay.
Why is Rob coming in so badly?
Jesus fuck, Rob. Yeah, please shut the fuck up for a second. Like, just stop.
Okay. I'm pausing this right here. Okay. I'm pausing this right here for a second, right? Because we've been stuck on this for a little bit. So I'm going to try to take a little moderator's discretion here and try to nail it down here, because we've been talking about this now for about 30 minutes. Yeah. And we haven't gotten deeper into it. So, I'm going to ask Pisco and Rob to describe what the contention is here, so we can find a way to move past it, so we can get deeper into the discussion. Okay, Pisco. Pisco. What's the contention?
Yeah. Currently, there is a factual dispute about whether Russian interference even happened and to what extent it happened. Rob Noerr is taking issue that, well, where's the evidence? And to a certain extent, that's a plausible claim, you might say, right? They say that the IRA is connected to Russia, and they say that there was the interference in social media. How can we be sure, right? I think that's a genuine concern that Rob has. But the answer to that is, one, a lot of the structure of the IRA, if you look at the Mueller report, has been redacted by Bill Barr. And part of the things that the Democrats and others have been asking for is an unredacted report. So to a certain extent, some of the actual evidence is classified, just to say. And another point is, none of this is evidence in the term of art sense. And so what we have really, Rob Noerr's right, is we have to rely on the entire American government not being a total corruption fest, right? And so it goes to the question of, do you believe the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mueller, Bill Barr, and all these other actors, or do you believe, I don't know, Rob Noerr? That is the assessment you have to make, because a lot of the evidence, unfortunately, is in hard drives, is in documents, and is classified.
Don't critically think.
Okay.
I don't like this guy. Let me personalize it. Don't critically think.
I do. Okay. I do want to. I'm specifically trying to isolate. So I'm trying to keep two people who have been the most back and forth to kind of explain what's happening. Rob Noerr, what do you think the contention is, and would you like to respond to what Pisco just said?
Yeah. It's just real simple. It just becomes very frustrating, because I think that Pisco's trying that, we're trying to isolate specific things. This is what the debate should be, and I'm enjoying that. Right, that we should say, here are the specific examples of Russian interference. That's all I want to do. Let's look at them one by one. The first thing we're looking at is the Internet Research Agency. They admit they have zero evidence. They're literally just saying, we're relying on the fact that we trust Mueller. We personally haven't seen any evidence that they were Kremlin officials. We know that a judge admonished Mueller and said, you don't have proof. You have to stop saying that they were. We know that Mueller dropped the charges because they didn't have enough evidence to prove it. But all they say is they've said it over. They can't provide any evidence. What
You're not representing us.
But
wait, Pisco, he let you be in. He didn't interrupt you. I would like you to not interrupt him.
Right. So what LSP is trying to do is, he says, oh, well, my evidence is the IP addresses and things with Guccifer. But that's a separate issue. We could move on to, that's fine. Let's move on to the hack. No problem. We could move on to that. My point is just, the reason this is important is because you hear these things that are just parroted. Oh, well, if I heard CNN or I heard the New York Times say this, so it must be true. And when you ask a person that said, well, I don't think anyone disagrees, we know that these trolls operated on behalf of Russia. Okay, show me the evidence. They can't. They just say, well, it must be redacted. But surely it's true, because that's what we've been told. And I'm just making it for the audience that they don't have proof. Their entire argument's going to be an appeal to an authority. Then when we later get to the point of how that authority is corrupt and we're able to show ways that is, they'll say, oh, no, we just have to trust the authorities. And when Dronetek's saying, but you can't do that because sometimes the authorities are wrong or they're corrupt, like in places like the Iraq War, there's the same argument that would be used. That's it. So if you want to move on to the hack.
No, I don't want to move on. I'm not going to move on from this, unfortunately.
Okay.
So Rob, how do you think the FBI gets the information on the Internet Research Agency?
How do I think the FBI got that information?
You think it's simple? You think it's they might have used confidential sources or confidential methods or electronic surveillance things that they don't want to reveal to adversaries?
That
you think that's
true.
Okay.
I mean, this is like the equivalent of like Deus Ex Machina is your argument.
No, that's not the argument. The argument is essentially, so I didn't redact this report. Bill Barr and the Justice Department redacted this report. And I think probably this part for a good reason. Why? Because we don't want to reveal how we find out that the Internet Research Agency is linked to Russia. Why? Because we might have a confidential informant that tells us. Revealing that would prejudice him and might put him in danger.
Clarifying question. When I remember a while ago, there was these documents that came out with a lot of black lines through a lot of words.
Yes.
Is that the report we're talking about? Okay.
Yeah. So if you go to page 15 of volume 1 of the Mueller report, you'll see it's subsection A, structure of the Internet Research Agency, redacted, harm to ongoing matter, harm to ongoing matter, harm to ongoing matter. And it pretty much like a huge part of it is blacked out for being a harm to an ongoing matter. So talk to Bill Barr if you want to see the underlying evidence of the structure of the Internet Research Agency. All I can tell you is, in order for this to be false, the Senate Intelligence Committee needs to be lying or needs to be lied to. The House Intelligence Committee needs to be lying or lied to. Mueller needs to be lying or lied to. Bill Barr needs to be lying or lied to. CIA needs to be lying or lied to. FBI needs to be lying or lied to. It's a massive conspiracy that needs to be organized in order for you to be right, which is they didn't do it. Right.
And that's so unbelievable because it's never happened, right?
When has it happened? When has something like this happened?
Literally,
if
you're just going to say, well, some people have lied sometimes. So you're
and we have
people have lied.
I feel like this is why I want to move on, because there's lots of corruption involved in this entire thing.
Right. And I just want to make it again, your entire case is going to be, well, we don't have any evidence. We just trust these groups. Great, fine. Moving on to the hacking.
We're ignoring just like everything.
I trust these Republicans. Yes.
So the alternative is the alternative has to be, if this isn't true, that Mueller is purposely lying, that Director Wray is purposely lying, and that Bill Barr is purposely lying. Right?
Not had to walk things back.
Simple. It's simple. It's simple. I'll tell you what it was. It has nothing to do with a lie. It's that they said, "Oh, these came from Russia, so we think they're agents of Kremlin."
That's
and then
not.
they weren't able to,
that's not.
And then they weren't able to prove it. That's why they dropped the charges.
Wait. So you're conflating now a criminal proceeding in which there was a prejudicial argument. From what I hear, I have to rely on what you said, where the argument is it's prejudicial to paint them as Russian agents without evidence. That has to go to whether the relevance of that evidence and whether or not that was properly founded and grounded in evidence. That's an evidentiary matter, from what it sounds like, having nothing to do with the underlying conduct, which is, did they in fact conduct this operation? It's limited in scope to whatever criminal proceeding you're talking about. And from a cursory look, it looks to be completely different than how you represented it to be. So don't try to conflate that with the underlying counterintelligence assessment that in fact there was this structure that they're relating to. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're trying to say.
Okay.
I'm saying what you're saying is that you have no proof, that you think that there's proof there, but it's redacted. And that for some reason, after a judge admonished them and said, put up or shut up, they decided to drop the charges. But you still believe that they were Kremlin.
Dude, that
you
happened.
believe they were
That's like,
Kremlin agents.
there's going to be so much here you guys like don't know about because the sources never reported to you.
Why do you think Mueller wouldn't have put up?
Because they didn't have the evidence.
You think? What could be another? What could be a charitable interpretation? If, first of all, if what you're saying about the criminal proceeding is true, I don't know anything about it.
So what prosecutions did he get?
Well, first of all, he got a lot, but we'll deal with that. That's you see how that's totally irrelevant, right? That's not at all relevant to this question, right?
No, but it is. I can actually provide this answer. I know we're like off script here, but the prosecution of Roger Stone for lying to Congress, what Roger Stone was lying to Congress about was his contacts with WikiLeaks.
But that's getting us off. You see, that's getting us off track.
And if we go to WikiLeaks, they were leaking shit about the Bush administration. And that was all good.
So we're off track now, right? We're talking about Roger Stone right now. So we don't want to talk about that. So my question.
Let's just move on. Let's just move on from this question. We're an hour in, and we've got to the least important thing in the world,
We're not willing to concede
that Russians put Black Lives Matter and LGBT and anti-Hillary Clinton messages up, most of which were seen after the election, and that's the Russian interference.
Hang on. It's relevant. How much it impacted the election? Is it important?
Who promoted? Let me ask you this: who promoted the rallies that Russia organized in this country?
That doesn't matter,
CNN,
right?
MSNBC, the networks, they all promoted the
anti-Trump
rallies that
right?
they.
Do you see how that's irrelevant?
And this is a shit show.
Because these are the people now driving this entire thing.
Whether or not someone effectively pushed forward a attempted interference doesn't matter to whether there was an attempted interference.
It doesn't matter that the people pushing this entire thing are the people who interfered. Okay, yeah. It doesn't matter.
Can I ask the question? Should all examples of Russian and or foreign election interference be investigated?
Yes.
Maybe not. Wait. So
of election interference? Yes.
I think usually, but we'll get to that. We haven't even acknowledged whether or not it existed. That's what it's a threshold question.
From that,
but in order to move on, we have to concede that it happened.
Because this is like a boondoggle.
Why do I have to concede that these were criminal agents? I don't have to concede that.
As a matter of argument, you have to concede.
There's so many.
Otherwise, how can we talk about whether or not the investigation was right or not if you think that there wasn't even anything to investigate?
I admit that the Russians attempted to interfere. I'm saying when we look at the specific allegations, I've yet to see one piece of evidence that say that Russian trolls posting on Facebook were actually connected to the Kremlin government. I've yet to see one. You don't have that evidence.
Wait, if you see this evidence, if you haven't seen this evidence, why are you admitting they interfered?
Yeah,
because I know that.
How did you admit that? Wait, what's your evidence that they interfered?
Okay.
Well, because the people they have at Russian state media that put articles out, right? That's an interference.
Wait, hang on a second. What is your evidence that Russia interfered at all? The Russian state media released some telecommunication that they did interfere? Yes. That's not been the position of the Russian state. The position of the Russian state is
they're lying. They're lying. Just like if the BBC is a government paid for journalist site and they put out opinion pieces and they put out evidence that skews the electoral because people look at it and they say, oh yeah, this makes me vote for Trump or this makes me vote for Hillary. That is an example of them interfering. Every government around the world is going to be trying to tilt the scales of an election in every other major country.
You think the publishing of an op-ed in a domestic Russian newspaper is what we mean by Russian interference?
No, that's not what I think you mean. But I definitely think that Russian interference.
What do you mean by Russian interference? What do you mean?
That's a great fucking question. So
yeah.
I've
been asking it over and over.
I don't mean the publication of a domestic op-ed in a Russian state media. That's not what I mean by Russian interference.
I know that's not what you mean.
Why? Here's my question. Why are you so singularly focused, you and the media and the Democrat Party, so singularly focused on Russian interference when we know that China's interfering, Iran's interfering? We have millions of illegal foreign nationals from another country in our country driving policy. It's not.
You want to talk about immigration reform? I'm happy to do another time.
Here's this. I just want to ask, how do you explain your completely contradictory indifference to one or the other?
I'm not indifferent to illegal immigration. I'm not. To answer
your
question.
Let's not
talk about immigration, please.
I'm sorry to bring that into it. I just mean like China, Iran, or whatever. Why is Russia your only focus? Why not China? Why not
question,
Iran?
Right? So it's a good question. So
I already know the answer, but go ahead.
So why focus on Russia for foreign interference? It's a non sequitur, right? So your question is why emphasize one over the other? It doesn't get to whether or not
the whole thing.
But it doesn't get to whether or not they in fact interfered, which is the question on the table right now. But
that's why
I'll answer your question.
Because it's really
I mean, if you can't even grant the base facts, then of course your outcome is going to be that the investigation was unjustified. Right? If you don't grant Russian interference,
the fact
is every time the investigation is going to be unjustified, right?
May I speak in just for quick 10 seconds? I am not accepting that I've seen proof that the Kremlin agents interfered. I don't think anyone's offered that proof. Just we have to trust them. But I will say this: for the purposes of this debate, I will concede that Russia interfered so that we could move on. I do not concede in that specific. For the purposes, I'll concede the interference. That's fine.
Got it. Okay, good. So we can move on.
So it's like
now the question I have is, should all examples of Russian interference be investigated?
So that's a great question, right? So what? Other people investigate all the time. So what? The founders cared.
Well, I'm only saying that based on other standards.
Will you just
Yeah.
let him finish? Like,
go
y'all,
ahead.
you guys keep interrupting. You ask a question, you don't let anyone finish. Let him finish.
The framers cared a lot about foreign interference. If you go into all the Federalist Papers, that's all they talk about, right? We don't want. That's part of the reason they want a Senate and the House. They don't want one-stop shopping for foreign diplomats and foreign interference. That's one of the rationales for having a bicameral legislature. It's one of the rationales for having state federalism, right? It's harder to mobilize domestic forces if you have states instead of one national government. So we split the atom and have federalism, right? So it's all they talk about, and they're concerned about England and they're concerned about France. So we have always, in our entire history, cared about foreign influence. We had laws in the past relating to immigration saying explicitly Chinese aren't allowed in here because of what they mean to our culture or what have you. We had laws that say, and still do have laws that say, we're going to limit foreign communists' ability to come in this country. There's a ton of jurisprudence and law and politics and theory in this country related to limiting and preventing foreign interference in this country's election and politics system. That's good, right? We want to limit that, don't we?
You didn't have to say any of that, but continue.
Okay. So now you're asking, well, how do we choose between which foreign interference?
It's a simple question.
It's like you're just beating around.
Do you think all instances of Russian interference should be investigated? Simple question. It should take 10 seconds to answer.
Yes. I mean, not to the same extent. Right?
Okay.
So
Okay. Fair enough. So if we're going to investigate, for example, which we did, as you can see, Russian trolls posting memes on Facebook, do you think that we should investigate for, say, a Russian spy that was being paid, that was being contacted by someone that was being paid by one of the candidates for president and disseminated disinformation that resulted on the spying of one of the presidential candidates? Should that be investigated?
Are you referring to the Steele dossier? Only with respect to, so the underlying question is why investigate? And the answer to why investigate is for proper criminal matters, federal crimes, or counter intelligence and national security purposes. So the answer to your question is you investigate when it's worth it, right? If there's a foreign influence to affect what color of paper is going to be used in a Florida fucking retirement home election for
That's clearly not what we're talking about.
Okay,
That's clearly not what
so the potential harm matters, and also the national security interest matters. With respect to the Steele dossier, what are you referencing?
The fact that the primary subsource of the claims in the Steele dossier was investigated in 2009 in an investigation that was never closed. It's trying to damage U.S. national security and was an admitted Kremlin source.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the major difference with the Steele dossier and what you're describing in your hypothetical with the Russian agent was that. Can I just please shut the fuck up?
It's always different.
Yeah, keep that to yourself. The major difference between that is the fact that the information from the Steele dossier was immediately turned over to law enforcement when damaging information was found. It wasn't held by the administration, it wasn't held by the campaign, and it wasn't coordinated with any other government to release these timely through WikiLeaks or some other organization like that to harm somebody's electoral chances.
So what we see is that, first, it's fundamentally not true. We know that they didn't immediately release the information. We know that they lied for a year about paying for it. The DNC and Hillary did. We know that they did exactly what they accused Trump of doing. They were accusing Trump of trying to reach out to Russians to get dirt on Hillary Clinton, when in fact it was the DNC and Hillary that actually reached out, paying an agent to reach out to Kremlin agents. A Kremlin agent that we learned last week was actually being investigated as a spy trying to damage U.S. national security. So unlike the Trump team, they actually did get dirt on Trump from Kremlin, which was designed to interfere in our election. And then the corrupt FBI never verified that information that they knew was from a dirty source, a Kremlin spy. They never verified it, and they used to spy on not just an American, but to spy on someone that was in President Trump's campaign. Why was, if Mueller was tasked with investigating all examples of Russian interference, why would he not investigate the biggest example of Russian interference, which was the Kremlin source claims in the Steele dossier?
I'll let you go. I have two answers to that, though.
Okay, so I mean, one of the reasons is because confidential informants aren't all that unusual in any law enforcement matter
at all,
right? Anytime, you're going to get
Russian spy, national security.
You're gonna get confidential. Try to keep it to yourself. You're gonna get confidential informants in anything who have come from nefarious backgrounds, who are dirty in some way. This isn't uncommon.
Let's stop there.
Right? Police rely on fucking drug dealers.
LSP, let's stop. Yeah, I want to stop there. That has to be true, right? So when you're taking down the cartel or you're taking down the mafia, and you get confidential informants, who you think they're going to be? Fucking Bugs Bunny down the road? No, they're going to be.
What does that have to do with Hillary Clinton paying to get that dirt from
It's
Russia?
answering your fucking questions. It's why
There's
it's
a difference
talking about the vetting of these informants.
Correct. There's a difference between getting an informant who's Russian.
That was never in the open. That was only dug up. Only that's now. Like nobody ever reported that.
It was literally investigated by the Horowitz. It was investigated by the Inspector General.
Inspector General, yeah. So there's a difference between getting a Russian CI and the Russian state going into your. So one is outward, right? You're getting stuff from outside, and the other is inward, right? You're going in.
So let me ask. So how does Hillary Clinton getting a CI? So what you're saying is it's perfectly. If Donald Trump would have paid to get dirt on Hillary from a Russian, that's perfectly fine.
Well, it depends. There could be some laws. I don't know what there's some.
The argument. It's an absurd claim. It's an absurd claim. We now know that not only. So your argument is, well, because the FBI used them without verifying, with 17 errors and omissions in using that Steele dossier that we now know was factually untrue. Because the FBI used them, then it's all kosher.
Well,
it was fine for everybody
to reach out.
Not only that, but look, Comey performed this whole act where he briefed Trump on the dossier and then had it leaked to the media at the exact same moment. What's that all about?
Comey didn't know, right? So
Comey leaked the Steele dossier? Where do you get that from?
Comey briefed Trump that it existed, and then it was leaked at the exact same moment.
John
that's a little different from Comey leaked it.
John Brennan worked for CNN. He told Comey, you should brief Trump about the salacious dossier. Comey then went and briefed Trump about the dossier. Someone who was in the meeting where Trump was briefed relayed that information back to CNN. And then CNN, who had been sitting on the dossier, used that meeting in the Oval Office as their hook to say, oh, President Trump's been briefed on a salacious dossier.
Okay. And then we're told the dossier had nothing to do with this investigation.
No, the dossier.
The dossier had nothing to.
That's what Comey said in a hearing the other day.
No, it wasn't the only piece of information used to establish the FISA warrant against Carter Page.
Let alone the Mueller report, right?
What y'all like to make this argument is that the dossier was the end-all, be-all for the entire basis of the investigation. It wasn't.
First off, just factually on this, did they apply for a FISA warrant against Carter Page before? Did they apply for a FISA warrant for Carter Page before the dossier?
They applied for a FISA warrant for Carter Page after the dossier. In fact,
no, that's not true. That's not true. James Comey just admitted in testimony the other day that actually the FISA court, which has a 97% acceptance.
That's not what you think. You don't know anything. Okay, so
regardless,
don't cite that fact.
Okay, sure. We'll take your word for it. Anyways, James Comey, you're wrong on this, so I don't know why we trust you on that.
Yeah.
James Comey just admitted that they applied for a FISA warrant on Carter Page and were denied, and then they used the Steele dossier and it was accepted. So the claim that the Steele dossier wasn't crucial to it is laughable.
Yeah. So there's different. So the FISA system works with a lot of internal review, right? So it could be bounced back at multiple stages. One of the most important stages of review is the FBI sends it to the Department of Justice lawyers who very meticulously vet all this information, and they can send back to the FBI. There's also clerks for the FISA courts who can send back at time after they give input. There's other agencies who give input and other members that I think the deputy FBI person has to sign it. There are multiple checks along the system where things can be sent back. As I understand it, there was the internal discussion of applying for a FISA warrant, but it was determined within the executive branch, in other words, within the Justice Department, that it didn't meet the standards for probable cause for Carter Page before the dossier. But they didn't apply for a warrant. Their warrant was never rejected.
James Comey disagrees with you.
So when you say that
they did apply, he said this 2 days or last week.
To whom?
The other day.
The FISC, the actual FISA court.
Yes.
Give me a link to that. That's
Did you watch the hearings? Hey, Kisco, did you watch the hearings?
Which Comey's been in tons of hearings. I don't know what you're
just
talking
the other day,
last week.
a few days ago.
The COVID one, I watched an hour of it. I don't know how long it was.
I just wonder about these. Have you watched the other hearings? Did you watch the Mueller hearings?
I watched the Mueller hearings when they happened. I watched the first Comey hearing when it happened.
Wrong stance, and you haven't even watched the Comey hearings.
No, wait. So I've seen most of the hearings. Every hearing you just mentioned, I've seen some of it. Right. So it's not like I'm totally clueless about the hearing.
You've seen all of it.
Okay, you guys have any evidence or not?
It's 7 hours, and anyway, each hearing, just so you know, and In other words, also we're talking about the FISA issue here, whether or not there was a FISA warrant applied for before the Steele dossier. I don't think there was to the court. There was internal deliberations, and if Comey said that there was an application to the FISA court before the dossier, he would be conflicting with the investigator general's report, IG report, with respect to that timeline. So I don't know what to tell you. The IG report says that there wasn't an application made to the FISA court. There are multiple layers of review that happen with the FISA process, including within the Department of Justice lawyers, who are often very strict and send things back, and the clerks of the actual FISA court send things back all the time. So just be careful about that.
Okay, yeah, nonetheless, the IG was quite clear that there were 17 errors and omission. Everyone who signed off on that warrant, including Rod Rosenstein and James Comey, it meant if they knew then what they knew now, they wouldn't have signed that warrant. Significant problems. We had James Comey. They claimed that the dossier was.
I didn't make procedural
I would like to hear Rob Noerr finish.
Right, thank you. We also had Comey, which I'll try to find by the end of this. I have to go through the transcript. I apologize that in preparation for this debate, you apparently did not watch that hearing, but James Comey admitted that they applied for a FISA application before the dossier. We all know it is, again, it's a denial of reality to claim that the dossier wasn't a key integral part of the actual application into Carter Page. So again, this is just
I have to stop you
because the whole act with CNN and everything.
I have to stop you. Two problems. One is it wouldn't have been bad if you file for a FISA warrant and you get rejected. That's not a problem, right? That just means our system is working as intended, right? So it's not like a big revelation that you were denied a FISA warrant. It just means you didn't meet probable cause, which is a lower threshold to prove. By the way, do you guys know probable cause for what for the FISA warrant? You should know, right? So
probable cause that Carter Page was a spy. That's what they had to prove.
Was a foreign agent, correct?
Right.
So that's the standard, right? And the fact that you get rejected isn't like a big evidentiary thing. Like it's not illegal to apply and be rejected. One,
you're making my argument. You're making my argument. Exactly. It was rejected. Then they added the dossier, and it was accepted.
No. You're not even understanding what I'm saying. One is, even if I were to concede to you that they sent something back and it was rejected, and they got back together and like, oh, we need more evidence, and we get more evidence. That's not nefarious, right? That's the system working as intended, right?
All these things together.
Again, the dossier was the additional evidence they got that we now know
that's not a problem, right?
Yes, it's a problem.
In
a criminal Why are we in this conversation right now? The conversation is
because you're too stupid for anything else.
I mean, you have nothing to add. You might as well be gone. Pisco, thanks for engaging in a good faith discussion. You on the bottom, you're just a joke, whatever. But the reason we're having this discussion is because we're discussing whether or not the dossier, which was Kremlin disinformation paid for by Hillary Clinton, was used to spy on a Trump associate.
That's not exactly what we're focusing on.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but that's what happened.
The focus on the timeline. Okay. The focus is on the timeline, right? So
it's so bad faith. It's insane.
You're asking whether or not it's bad for them to have like gone to even if I accepted they went to the FISA court, which I don't, if they had gone and got rejected and then to gather more evidence, whether that's nefarious. I don't think it is, because in a normal criminal justice system, you apply for a warrant, let's say a search warrant for like a house or a drug house, and the judge's like, no, you don't have enough evidence. Come back when you have more evidence. Okay, here's more evidence. There's nothing nefarious about that, right? That's a system.
The nefarious, again, I don't understand what you're discussing. The point is, was there disinformation from a Kremlin agent that the FBI
okay, so don't
you don't even know if there was, dog.
You don't have to fight if there was. Don't talk about the procedural posture then, about them going and then coming back, right? That doesn't matter.
The point is, it does matter, and you're making it because they went and didn't get to fight the warrant.
Just shut the fuck up for a second.
You add nothing whatsoever.
Okay. I'm stopping it for a second. I'm stopping this for a second. Okay. So I'm going to do what I did last time, because this usually works and it makes us all be friendly and fun time. Okay. But I'm going to take a quick moment and I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to ask you a really tough question. Okay. What's your favorite childhood movie? Go, Dronetek.
Total Recall.
Recall. Okay.
That's a childhood movie? You were watching that as a kid?
Oh, yeah. Alien.
Three-titted lady?
Total Recall and Alien.
Okay. Rob Noerr.
I'll say Jurassic Park.
Awesome. And vaccines turn the freaking frogs gay, also known as LSP.
I'm sorry, I was on Prime's panel last night, and we were arguing with like vaccine denialists and stupid shit like that. Probably Star Wars. I was a real big fan of Star Wars.
Awesome. And Pisco.
It's a tie between Star Wars Episode 6 and Batman and Robin, the Joel Schumacher rest in peace Batman movie.
You have terrible taste.
I was a child. Okay, I recognize now that it's like schlock, but back then I would rent it every week.
The back card.
Yeah, the back card. I love the back card. I love Mr. Freeze.
My two favorite childhood movies was Brother Bear. I loved Brother Bear. I thought the animation was so pretty. And James and the Giant Peach, I had it on VHS.
Great movie.
And I remember I had this experience where I went to boxing, and my coach had never seen the movie, and I tried to explain it to him as this magical adventure where a kid goes into a fucking giant peach where it then turns to clay animation. And he looked at me and he said, how many times have you got hit in the head? Okay, maybe you should quit boxing. It was not a great experience. Anyway, that's to bring the temperature down a little bit. Now, I'm going to ask the point of contention between the two people who have been having the most dialogue back and forth. And if anybody else would like to have a point to add.
I need a pee break.
Okay, Drone, you can go take a pee break then. It's going to be Pisco, it's going to be Norm, and after I saw LSP raise his hand, so I will throw it to him afterwards as a transition person. So I'm going to start this time with Rob, since last time I was with Pisco. What is the point of contention right now?
Right. Pisco's just making a bunch of arguments saying, oh, well, if they go to get a FISA application, it's denied. That doesn't prove nefarious nation. No one's claiming that. He's been on this point for 10 minutes. No one's claiming it. My point is, they went to get a warrant to spy on someone associated with Trump. They were denied. Then they got the Steele dossier that was sourced by a Kremlin spy. Then it was accepted. Thereby, what I thought everyone acknowledged in reality, even people on the left, even James Comey said that the Steele dossier was crucial to getting that warrant to spy. That's it. And the denial of reality has led us down a 15-minute rabbit hole, which is good, because this is what the other side needs to do to deflect from the corruption that we see all through the FBI. They have to take us down these rabbit holes of denying reality and saying, oh, no, but look, you don't understand the procedurals of actually it was good. That has nothing to do with it. I literally, was the Steele dossier crucial to getting the FISA warrant on Carter Page? Yes, it was. Was it sourced from a Kremlin official and the FBI knew it was a Kremlin official? Yes. Did the FBI acknowledge that they never verified that? Yes. Did the FBI know that that was someone they were investigating as a Kremlin spy that damaged national security? Yes. That's it. I don't care what the usual process for, well, you should be happy that they denied a FISA warrant before. And I just want, the reason that this is important is because they have done exactly what I've known. They thought that it was important to investigate trolls posting memes on Pokemon Go, but all of a sudden they're like, well, we're not so sure if we should investigate the Russian interference that was against Trump, that was actually the most impactful Russian interference, which was a Kremlin spy who interfered so much that he actually got the FBI to buy his disinformation and spy on Donald Trump. All of a sudden, their claims about the founding fathers were really serious about foreign interference, and they thought that it was really important. All of a sudden, out the window. No, we don't investigate that interference. That's the absurdity of this position, and that's how you know that this was a coup against Donald Trump and was corrupt from the get-go, because the FBI refused every single time to look at foreign election interference if it benefited Hillary Clinton.
Okay, so now I'm going to throw this over to Pisco to respond and to clarify.
There's so many things that are wrong with what Rob Noerr said. It's hard to know where to start. So one is the contention that the attempt to stop Russian interference by using Russian assets is itself Russian interference. That, I think, is flatly not true and absurd in its face, that you could equate purposeful state action with the attempt to mitigate that action by using Russian information. So there's a difference fundamentally, substantively, between the acts being contemplated by either side, as it were, especially since one is attempting to ameliorate the effects of Russian interference, the other is itself Russian interference. The second premise that's wrong is the notion that the Carter Page FISA warrant stuff really matters to the fundamentals of the Mueller report and Russian investigation. As far as I can tell, Carter Page FISA warrant didn't gather a great amount of evidence or a great amount of stuff. And it wasn't sort of a focal point or one of the important parts of the Russian investigation. We haven't even gotten to the DNC stuff, which I think is extremely troubling. Didn't really have anything to do with Carter Page or the Trump campaign, for that matter. That's premise number two that's wrong. In, I think, Rob's formulation, he stated that they failed to do it under the current evidence to get the FISA warrant, and they were rejected from the FISA court. I deny that as a factual matter because I haven't been presented evidence that they applied for the FISA warrant. But granting that they apply for the FISA warrant with the less evidence before the dossier, I wouldn't think that's a problem procedurally, right? And the way Rob paints it is, they went to they couldn't get it, so they went and got whatever evidence they could to get a FISA warrant. Procedurally, his problem isn't with the posture of going there and coming back. His problem is with the underlying evidence, that it's fucked up evidence. That, I think, is what he should focus on, and shut up about they went one time, then they went again, right? If it's the case that they were rejected once, that's a system working as intended. And in fact, I think we should be happy that there's, people are actually enforcing the probable cause standard. And it maybe gets to why there's such a high rate of granting FISA warrants, and that there's so much internal review in the FISA warrant process. So I think if we dispense with, I don't even think this is a relevant line of inquiry, but assuming that it is, for the sake of argument, we can get to the underlying merits and evidence of the Steele dossier if you'd like to.
Okay, real quick, I found the evidence. It's from 18 seconds. Senator Graham, let's go through the application. There are two parts to the application. Was there an effort to get a warrant approved without using the dossier? Mr. Comey at 1813. Yes, my understanding is this.
Sorry.
Right, that's my... Okay, well, it's a semantic. The point is, without the dossier, they did not accept an effort to get a dossier or to spy on Carter Page.
You acknowledge that you were wrong because you said they actually applied to the court, and I said exactly what Comey just said, that they were going through a process internally, and they decided not to go forward with it.
Perhaps then I was wrong is if they went directly to the court. I'll acknowledge that. I don't know that that's exactly what he's admitting. Nonetheless, the thrust of the argument is true that James Comey is admitting here that they would not have went forth with getting a FISA application if they didn't have the Steele dossier. Okay, so then the Steele dossier was the Russian disinformation, right? The Russian spy that was never verified, that was acknowledged by the FBI trying to damage U.S. national security. That we now know was disinformation. It actually was Russian disinformation, as the Mueller report proved. It was crucial to being able to spy on the Trump campaign.
Wait.
Yes.
It was crucial to the FISA warrant against Carter Page.
Right.
But I disagree with your premises about that it's a Russian spy orchestrated by the Russian government. I don't agree with that. How do you know that?
So a couple things. One, again, I think that it's laughable, and anyone who's objective could watch this and see how funny it is that the fervor that you spoke of the founding fathers needing to investigate things like Russians posting memes on Facebook. My God, it's crucial to democracy. But Hillary Clinton paying a foreign operative to get information from someone the FBI thought was a Russian spy.
Wow, right?
But that's legit. We don't need to investigate.
I have an answer, but
when you say this was used as, now I understand what you're going to say. Well, but he was used as a counter-informant. Not when Hillary Clinton was paying him. Hillary Clinton doesn't get to pay Russians as a counter-informant. How do you know that if Trump Jr. had actually got dirt on Hillary from Veselnitskaya, the Russian lawyer, that he wouldn't have immediately gone to the FBI? That was never in the calculus. People said the mere fact that Don Jr. met with someone who was Russian and tried to get information on his opponent was itself a problem warranting investigation. But all of a sudden, when Hillary Clinton and the DNC does the very same thing, and then they actually get the disinformation.
We disagree with the premise.
How is it different?
I can't explain, but LSP has been raising this.
It's always different when Democrats do it.
I think it's different.
You can carve it into stone.
I can explain it, but LSP, he's had his hand up. I want to give him time.
Yeah, sure would be great if we could just establish a dialogue like adults without yelling over each other incessantly and constantly.
To be fair, didn't you say your mom?
Well, yeah, after he cried because I called him stupid. But I called him stupid because he's made this conversation totally bad faith, right? He goes on bitching about denial of reality earlier. We spent the first 30 minutes of this debate asking what our evidence is constantly when we repeated the same fucking thing. He's either hard of hearing or he's too stupid to understand it. I don't know what to say. So I'm going to repeat what I said in my opening because I want you all to understand what's going on here once again, right? We have a set of facts about Russian interference that Rob's not even denying. He's just complaining about the standard of evidence, right? And what we have here is serious, and we have evidence that the Trump administration conspired with it. And we've got the same reports from the Inspector General saying it was not a politically motivated investigation, that it had sound legitimacy to all of it, all of this stuff. And every time we want to get down to this, what we end up having to deal with is these silly distractions, right? These silly red herrings that take us off on left field about how we don't prioritize other election interference, things like that, or how
you can't explain why your indifference is different depending on the political.
It's not. Investigate all election interference. It's not.
Why didn't the FBI? Why didn't Mueller or the FBI investigate the election interference?
Why did IG Horowitz say that the investigation was sound and legit?
He didn't. He said that the precursor for opening it was legit. He didn't say the investigation was. He isolated incredible problems.
He said we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence that political bias or improper motivation influenced the FBI's decision.
Why were all these emails going around between the? Why were all these emails going?
I'll answer.
The investigators who were clearly partisan. How do you explain that?
Well, that's not what the Inspector General found with respect to the investigators' Dronetek.
Inspector General Horowitz was
Went
asked
straight to the media. That cover letter, remember? Straight to the media.
First off, Inspector General Horowitz did find evidence of bias. He was quite clear about it. He said that he did not.
I literally just quoted him. You stupid fucker. No, we did not find documentary or testimonial
wait. Elsby. Okay, we gotta let Rob finish his point. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Nobody's let me finish my point.
Rob did interrupt him.
I interrupted him.
Okay. This is what I'm gonna do. LSP, you're gonna finish your point. I'm gonna throw it back to Rob because Rob wanted to make a point too. Okay.
Go Rob. He's gonna cry. Let him go.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Let's be nice, guys.
I'm trying. You're so bad faith. It's insane to me.
You keep lobbing the attacks, and then you're like, "You're bad faith."
I'm lobbing them because you're plainly bad faith. Because I say something, I even quote from the thing, and you're like, "That's not what he said."
Because there's these basic things that we can't agree on. Because there's like these basic tenets where you're completely hypocritical, but you won't acknowledge it at all. And so it's like we can't even like argue again.
Okay, let's get on it, Rob. What are you gonna say?
Okay,
sure.
Your double standard.
So your claim, what I said was that the IG did not say that there was no bias. That's not what he said. Here, I'll link this document to you. This is from his actual testimony. I'll link it after I read it. This is from Wednesday, December 18th, 2019.
This is his
Senator
testimony
Hawley.
with respect to the report, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
This is Senator Hawley. Quote, was it your conclusion that political bias did not affect any part of the Page investigation, any part of Crossfire Hurricane? Horowitz, we did not reach that conclusion. Hawley, because I could have sworn, in fact, I know for a fact that I heard today from this committee. That's not your conclusion, IG Horowitz. We've been very careful about the connection with the FISA for the reasons you mentioned, not to reach that conclusion in part, as we've talked about earlier. The alteration of the email, the text messages associated with the individual did that, and our inability to explain or understand or give explanation so we can understand why this happened. Senator Hawley, I think that we're left with two possibilities here. You have 3 different investigative teams you testified earlier. You've got a dozen people at the FBI. You've got decisions made over time to mislead the FISA court. Either these people were really incompetent or bad at their jobs, or they had an agenda they were pursuing. And an agenda, I don't know what you'd put in front of it, political, personal, but whatever it is, it's antithetical to democracy. So there you have IG Horowitz admitting that he is not reaching the conclusion that bias didn't play a part. In fact, if you then go back and look at the IG's report referencing his investigation into the Hillary Clinton investigation, he particularly not only shows the obvious bias from agents such as Strzok and Page, but definitively claims at the end of that he is not confident that he could roll out that bias played an important role in their prioritizing the Russia investigation over the Hillary investigation.
That's like boilerplate. Hang on, that's boilerplate language that Mueller uses, that every prosecutors use. Is if the evidence of absence, right? So I can't prove to a reasonable doubt that it didn't, right? It just wasn't evidence of it.
But you made the claim that he spoke in the affirmative that bias didn't play a role. No, that's not true.
There's no evidence that bias played a role.
No, but that's not what you said. You said the IG said that bias didn't play a role. That's what you said. And you were wrong. And then you called me a dumb fucking stuff when I was right.
I didn't say that.
Well,
I know
all these
you didn't.
FBI agents.
Let's
amend
our
how much
statement.
they hate Trump. That's not part of it.
Okay, I want to give LSP some time to speak. He's been raising his hand. He's been waiting a little bit. He wanted to finish earlier. Okay, LSP.
Okay, so what the IG said, quoting again, we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence that political bias or improper motivation influenced the FBI's decision to seek FISA authority on Carter Page, right? He's saying there is a lack of evidence for your assertion that there was a political bias to investigate Carter Page, to get a FISA warrant on Carter Page, right? He's denying that there's evidence.
Pisco, you just talked about boilerplate. Isn't that a boilerplate thing that he would say? He can't definitively prove there's bias, but when he's asked by Senator Hawley, he's saying, I'm not saying there isn't bias.
Right. But that's true, right? So like the same thing with respect to the collusion stuff that we're not even it doesn't seem like we're going to get into, but with Mueller said, right, we can't prove that there was a criminal conspiracy. So
Pisco, can I ask you some good faith questions for Rep?
Sure.
Would you acknowledge that the people involved in Crossfire Hurricane were basically top level agents?
Would I deny that they were basically?
No, not deny. You would agree that they were? That's what I'm asking.
A lot of the people involved were to approve the FISA warrant process needs to have really important people sign off on it. So it's
right. But I'm not just saying that, like in Crossfire Hurricane in general. Like, for example, IG Horowitz said that it was 4 handpicked teams of 3 or 4 that were top level FBI agents. You don't dispute that, correct?
I don't dispute that high level Justice Department officials and FBI officials were involved in this important investigation.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If one of those FBI agents or a lawyer for the FBI if the FBI requested information from the CIA and said, was Carter Page an asset that helped you in your investigation of corrupt Russian officials?
I mean, you're not going to get me on this. So
no. I'm not talking. Just if I could finish, I'm not saying not to present it. Then you acknowledge this high-level FBI agent. We have no reason to believe he's incompetent. He not only didn't present the evidence correctly to the FISA court, he literally changed the evidence to say the opposite of what it said. So he took the email from the CIA saying, yes, Carter Page was an asset in our investigation against Russians, and he changed it to say he was not an asset.
This is the lawyer who pleaded guilty, right?
Kevin Kleinsmith, yes.
Yeah, so that's wrong. It was criminal, and he's pleaded guilty to it.
Okay, so you think that wasn't biased? Now, when he was tweeting #resistance and how much he hated Trump, you think it was just incompetence and not bias that factored into his decision to break the law in that way?
You see, I don't presume to know the mental state of individuals in their working capacities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be the case that bias was at play. There's also like a more charitable interpretation of why people would omit, right? Maybe this particular actor who changed the email, he's really a bad actor, right? This lawyer, but other people aren't, right? The crimes and the bias of one person, I don't think is transferable to anybody, to everybody necessarily. And also keep in mind that none of the lawyers knew about this. So presumably Mueller down the line, the Department of Justice lawyers didn't know about this. This review was isolated to the FBI, and the Justice Department was blindsided. One of the problems with this whole FISA warrant process is because there's so many checks in the system, there's a lot of room for errors to be compartmentalized. And in this case, it looks like it was compartmentalized.
Look, that might make sense if this was the only error that happened. But we know there were 17 errors and omissions that were crucial. We know that the Woods procedure was violated.
Yes, they're all. But
if I can finish real quick,
yeah.
Hundreds of times the Woods procedure was violated. We know that the FISA court has came out and said they no longer can be sure that they can trust the FBI due to the fact that they were misled so bad in the application of this warrant. One of the things that was signed off on, the biggest error, believe it or not, bigger than changing evidence to say the opposite of the truth, bigger than that, and IG Horowitz said this is what he found particularly troubling, was the fact that the FBI finally, after the second warrant, got around to contacting this primary subsource, the Kremlin official. And when they asked him about the allegations in the dossier, he said that it was all bar talk. He was shocked that they would use this as evidence. He said that it was all should be taken with a grain of salt and that it wasn't as it was being presented to them. Yes, now, the FBI, this was multiple agents that were involved in this interview and multiple people knew about it. They went to the FISA court, which they relied on this individual's testimony to
You don't know that.
Yes, we do know that.
You don't know the omissions and first of all, you don't know the omissions and the impropriety FBI would have made the Justice Department not apply for the warrant. It's possible they wouldn't have applied for the warrant.
We already went through this debate. They decided they weren't going to apply until they had the seal dossier.
But what I mean to say is, so now we're talking about impropriety not in the warrant they didn't send, but the warrant they did send. So these are all improprieties with respect to the warrants they did send and the renewals that they got. So We don't know that including this, and I think the IG makes clear that if they had included these omissions or these material facts, that they wouldn't have approved it anyway. I mean, you say they have a high rate of, you claim they're a rubber stamp. If you really think they're a rubber stamp, then you would think it doesn't matter if they include it or not, right?
How is this a defense for the fact that this was clearly corrupt? We have multiple agents that were aware that their entire case, we already went through the argument that they decided not to go forward with the FISA warrant until they had the dossier. We know that this Kremlin spy was the primary source.
You're not
for the
understanding
allegations of that dossier. Right. Just real quick, right? We know that they talked to that primary source that said, yeah, this is all garbage. We know that they went to the FISA court and said, hey, we talked to the subsource. And the FISA court said, oh, really? What did they say? And they said, well, we think he's truthful. And they said, oh, what did he say? And they said,
you're not understanding me, Rob. So I'm saying,
I am understanding.
You don't know that the judge relied on any information. You don't know the basis of it's an ex-parte proceeding. It's in camera review. You don't have access to the unclassified FISA warrant application. And you don't know what the judge did or did not rely on.
It's all secret behind a curtain. So you
correct.
can't argue against it, Rob. You can't. Where his argument?
Why do you claim it? That's the law.
We know. Well, here's how we know. Here's how we know. We know the IG that looked in it said he was particularly troubled by this. We know that the FISA court admonished the FBI for this. We know that James Comey and Rod Rosenstein said had they been aware of this, they would have never signed off on the warrant. So it's just, I find it very humorous how you constantly resolve things and saying, well, we can't know what was really said, so we have to give it the interpretation I want. So even when we have a situation where the actual agents are tweeting or texting about how they want insurance policies, the IG saying, I'm stunned that they omitted this. This is flabbergasted to me. When we have FBI agents, it's not gishgalopping.
Yeah,
did the IG say there were 17 errors and omissions?
There were people close to the Hillary campaign involved in the investigation itself.
I can grant you, first of all, I grant you that there were 17 material omissions and improprieties in the FISA application process. I don't even think this FISA warrant is important to the Russia investigation. That's how unimportant I think this is, and how far along this train we are. I don't even think it's important, this FISA warrant in at all.
And every argument I have,
but this is
say that your position is unimportant to me. I'm just going to say that.
What's that?
Right. So the point is then we have the actual spying of a presidential campaign and his team. That's not important that it was done corruptly. And your position that all interference should be investigated, all of a sudden it stops and it's not important when it's Russian interference that helps.
Again, I don't agree with that premise that this was Russian interference. So
yes,
until you convince me of that premise, right? That I
was the Steele dossier true?
You are misrepresenting my position.
Was the Steele dossier accurate?
Information put together by at least one subsource that was a national security risk, a Russian spy. You're telling me that wasn't Russian interference?
Is the source in the Russian government equivalent?
It was. They were using it to attack Trump.
Wait, so understood? Yeah. So no one denies that this was opposition research. So my question is this: in general, as a principled matter, is an informant from the government the same as government action? Is it the same?
It can be.
It can be.
If it's a spy, right.
So one way it can be is if, let's say, the government intentionally puts the spy there, right?
So if this was a legitimate Russian informant, then his information would have been accurate, was it?
Okay, so that's the question, right? So, but it also, let's be clear. So I just granted you, it could be the Russian government.
Right.
It also sometimes isn't, right? When would it not be?
So how do we decide which it was?
Okay.
We look and see if the information was accurate, correct?
No, that's not how you decide. So the information could be totally, the informant could be wrong about everything they say as a factual matter, or they could have, half truth.
Right, but I think that we should.
That wouldn't go to whether or not it was actual Russian interference, right?
So if we expect someone of being a Kremlin spy that's trying to hurt Russia, trying to hurt U.S. national security, but we say, well, we're going to trust them as a counter-informant here. Then we find out that the information they presented was a total lie. Yes, I think it's safe to say that this wasn't. Yes, it is.
Information from the Steele dossier was the total lie that you keep complaining about. Which information specifically?
All of it. Show me. Right.
It's confirmed.
I can't speak to which parts are or not.
Oh my God,
Rob.
Jeez.
To be accurate in the Steele dossier?
I don't know. I think the jury's out on some
Nothing.
of it. I think some of it's been substantiated.
Really? I could read from the Mueller report if you like. I could read from the Mueller
election
report.
meddling was true at least.
If you'd like, I could read from the Mueller report what parts were true.
Right now, first,
let's talk about China interference. Who is China interfering for? Does anybody give us a minute?
But so now, do you know how this is different? So now you're talking about 2020 interference with respect to Biden, which is different than
true. There's 2016 right, but it's 2016.
The only legitimate election is one that's won by Democrats. So let's just lay that out right now.
No. Okay,
that's the.
I want to go back. Listen, you're not going to get me on the. I'm not going to forget the premises we just laid out before. I think you're misrepresenting me when you say Russian interference is okay for the Democrats, but it's not for the. I deny that was Russian interference. So apparently
apparently it is okay for the GOP since they're the ones obstructing the investigation and suffering nothing for it. They're the ones taking towers with Russian agents and suffering nothing for it. Well, yeah, that's what I would say. What happens when you fire like the person investigating you?
Let's do a couple just like quick questions, of things that you have mentioned that I think you all would like to talk about. So, for example, you mentioned Paul Manafort giving polling data to a Russian.
How do you explain that?
Okay, look, real quick. Why?
I just want you to know. I don't know. I just want to say, we're about to leave the world of the Steele dossier, and I just want to make it clear that I do not accept that the use of that dossier is akin to Russian interference. I don't accept
it was a Russian Kremlin agent. And I just want to make, just real quick for the audience, I just want to make clear that Pisco's point is the founding fathers wanted all Russian interference looked at.
You're misrepresenting me, right?
No, that's what you said, right? You went off on
founding
it.
fathers meant you can never ask an agent of a foreign government what their government's up to.
I think that the founding fathers would have been disgusted.
Rob, do you think that's what the founding fathers had in mind?
I think the founding fathers would have.
Don't ever listen to a Brit about what Britain's up to.
By the way, some of the people in the Revolutionary War were spies, right? That they relied on. British spies,
foreign agents,
all the time. All the time, they relied on these.
Okay. Rob was asked a question. I'd like to hear his response to the question.
I think the founding fathers would have been appalled at the fact that the FBI took information from someone they knew that they themselves has accused is trying to damage U.S. national security, never verified that information, and spied on a presidential candidate. Let me ask you the question then, right? So if Donald Trump goes out and pays a French former spy to get data from a Chinese spy, someone that the FBI feels is a Chinese spy, that says that Joe Biden likes getting peed upon by Chinese women and that he's operating as an agent for the Chinese government, and then a bunch of FBI agents that are texting, we need an insurance policy against Joe Biden, takes that information and starts to spy on people in Joe Biden's campaign. And they never verify it. We later find out that 17 times they lied and had had errors and omissions, including changing evidence to say the opposite of what it was. They didn't tell the FISA court that the actual source that they used.
Are you asking if I'm a political hack?
Look, as the FBI has told us, the only legitimate attack is against a Republican, because if you're attacking Joe Biden, that's the Russians.
Okay, so if your question
is, okay with Trump doing it?
Is your question if I'm a total hypocrite and my opinion on things would change based on political party, and you think I'm going to say yes?
Okay, so it's okay if Trump does that. Thank you.
Hang on.
No problem.
Wait. I would like to hear Pisco's full response.
It can be wrong for other reasons, right? It's possible that that dossier is wrong for other reasons, and there could be other laws implicated. The question is whether or not that's Chinese interference in that case. I don't know.
Okay, so right, but you would be okay with the Trump administration spying on Biden's campaign based on that information?
I reject the premise that this was the Obama administration. This is the Justice Department of the United States. Okay.
Well, we now know, for example, that Barack Obama was personally briefed by John Brennan 3 days before the opening of Crossfire Hurricane that Hillary Clinton was seeking to develop a plot saying that Trump was a Russian spy.
That was back in the day when the president didn't involve himself in Justice Department investigations and legal matters. Guys, what's that?
The president, yeah.
I'm not a hack. Of course, I'm going to say that all laws and precedents should be applied equally, regardless of political party.
Okay, so then let's go with that. So let's talk about failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. Paul Manafort was charged for failing to register as a foreign lobbyist, correct? In his efforts in 2013 in lobbying for a Ukrainian that was pro-Russian. Right, but that was one of the things, correct? Yeah, do you think that was an important thing to charge him with, failing to register as a foreign lobbyist, advocating for Russia?
Why not?
Was
Yeah,
that really worth? Oh, it was? Well, the same indictment, Mueller's indictment, said that he worked with two groups. One was called Mercury LLC. The other was called the Podesta Group. So Hillary Clinton's campaign manager's group actually violated the exact same crime with the exact same people as Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort was charged with a crime. The Podesta Group was allowed to retroactively file paperwork. Are you okay with that?
I reject your premise that these are the same events, and also
Mhm.
prosecutorial discretion. We endow our
Yep.
prosecutors with a great amount of discretion.
dude. Come on.
Okay, right. So we're starting to see. So that foreign interference wasn't important, but again, when it helped the Democrats.
Hey, this
Now,
isn't
we're
foreign,
just,
this isn't foreign interference. This is you're conflating two issues, right? One is failing to register as a foreign agent under U.S. laws. It's different than foreign interference, right?
Okay, next question. Next question. You said that Paul Manafort sharing polling data with Konstantin Klimek was a bad thing. Do you have any proof that Konstantin Klimek was actually a Russian agent?
The Senate Intelligence Committee report states he is. Other than that, no. I don't have surveillance of his house and him exchanging envelopes with Vladimir Putin personally. Like we're on the same boat again.
Okay, so if he was a Russian agent, can you explain how at the exact same time Obama's State Department officials were also sharing information with Konstantin Klimek?
I lost you for a
This-
second. Can you repeat that?
Yes, if he was clearly a Russian agent, can you explain why it was okay then for the Obama administration State Department to be having conversation with Konstantin Klimek at the same time if he was clearly a Russian agent?
Hang on a second. So you think that it's the State Department should be precluded from talking to anyone they want with respect to foreign relation issues? You think it's the same thing for a private citizen to talk to that person with the intent to violate election laws?
Right. What I think is if you're going to say that it's bad to share information with someone because they're a Russian spy, then it should be bad for any political group to be doing it. Why is it okay for the Obama administration to be involved with the Russian spy?
Because the federal government has plenary authority over international relations, and Paul Manafort isn't the federal government in 2016 when he's passing off.
So what law did Manafort break by giving polling data to a Russian?
He actually, in that case, I don't know if he broke any laws, but
right. Oh, so he didn't. So what we're talking about is not just legal implications, but you also said ethical implications. Again, what we see every single time, when we point to, all right, Hillary's team had connections to Russians as well, but that's okay. Well, Obama's was connected to the same Russians. Well, that's okay. Well, we had the Podesta Group that was working with Manafort. Well, that's okay.
I pointed to Bush and WikiLeaks earlier because nobody cared. Now they do.
Did I say that Trump and his campaign were involved in a criminal conspiracy with respect to the Russian interference? I didn't make that, and neither did LSP. I'll tell you that. We said wrongful conduct.
So we're all acknowledging that it was all. So now we know that it was all garbage. We're all admitting that it was garbage, that Trump illegally conspired, or his team illegally conspired with Russians.
Why do you even ask a question if all you're going to do is explain the answer to us immediately after?
Yeah,
like you're asking a question and then you're just telling us what we think.
I didn't ask a question. You answered, and I said. So what you're saying is,
okay.
Let us explain in our own words.
Okay. LSP. Maybe I wasn't clear at the beginning. If I ever raise my voice, I'm raising my voice not because I want to speak over you and dominate. Okay, cool. Okay, so this seems a little unproductive from this point. I remember earlier this was brought up, and we are about to go on the 2-hour mark, so I don't want to bring this on for 3 hours. I don't want this to be a 3-hour debate. So I wanted to get 2.5 is probably the furthest I would want to go with this. So there is a topic that was brought up earlier that I thought I believe we haven't really touched on it deeply. It was specifically about the DNC email hack that I think Pisco brought up earlier. And it was something that he's been saying since the beginning that he wanted to talk about in depth. So since that was something he wanted to guide the conversation to, if there's no objections, I would maybe want to jump from this over to that.
Sure.
No? Okay.
I'm happy to do that. So one is whether or not the email hack happened. I think that's like kind of boring.
Can we determine real quick? I'm sorry, Can we determine why that's special from the Republican hacks that happened before? Why the Democrat hacks are this like monumental event, but the Republican hacks happen, whatever. I'm just wondering.
Because though the Republicans were hacked, the information was only provided on the Democrats to
No. I'm talking during the Bush administration.
Well, I don't know. You don't know.
The
answer to your question is no.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
don't know.
I don't know.
Silly
So
distraction.
I'm focusing on 2016 because that was like the topic. I didn't prepare
Right,
for.
so it's convenient to you, and okay, let's
Well,
go.
it's convenient to stay on topic.
Well, convenient to your argument. But good.
Yeah, it
It's
is convenient.
convenient
That's what I
to
prepared
How
for.
convenient. You fact checked
Convenient
us.
to
How
your
convenient. You want to stay on topic.
Okay, so
Very
we could get into the weeds about whether the DNC hack happened, and maybe that's worth hashing out whether it happened. I think it happened, but regardless of that, Trump's public statements about the hack, that he would openly encourage further dissemination of hack materials. How is that justifiable? Assume that the hacks happened, and Trump makes his public statements in a rally. How do you justify that ethically?
Go ahead, Drew.
So first of all, I say it was a joke. Obviously, from Hillary Clinton made the same joke recently, right?
So if it was serious, it wouldn't have been justifiable, right?
If Donald Trump's legitimately telling the Russian government to hack someone, yeah, that would not be justifiable. Absolutely.
But it was obviously a joke that Hillary Clinton also told, right?
Okay, so he wasn't serious as the defense to the what he said publicly, correct?
Correct.
So,
Well, why is Hillary's attempt to obstruct justice? Why is that? Like she's attempting to obstruct justice by destroying devices and deleting emails, and somehow the scandal is the attempt to find that data.
Okay, so I can't speak.
When it's a Democrat, the scandal is the attempt
my
to find the scandal.
I think
go ahead.
they took system images of the DNC servers.
Yeah.
I don't know the wiping with a cloth shit that happened. I don't know what Hillary.
The Mueller probe did the same thing, right? They destroyed their devices, right?
No,
they backed everything up. They were like constantly afraid that Trump was going to fire them, so they made they were meticulous about backing everything up constantly.
I think they backed up a lot of shit.
Destroyed their devices, right? Before
I don't know.
They did.
I don't know.
Okay, well, don't worry about it. There's backups.
If you like, Pisco, I could try to answer your specific point here, which is this was clearly a joke. If Trump, as was alleged, had these secret back channels to Russia, why would he in national television give his super secret important message to hack Hillary? This is clearly a joke. And what Dronetek's saying, sure.
If you accept there's no impropriety because that's a joke, then why does he direct Roger Stone, knowing that Russia did in fact end up hacking the Podesta emails and the DNC and the DCCC? Why does he use Roger Stone to coordinate with WikiLeaks? Like either it's a joke or he's a conspirator.
I'm not sure the extent at which Trump did direct Roger Stone, but even if that's the case, so what? Someone got information that a news organization did published, and it was detrimental to his opponent. By the same token, we know. No, wait, just real quick. If I could finish my thought, real quick, we know that, for example, Hillary Clinton asked China to hack Donald Trump's tax returns. We know that Donald Trump's tax returns were illegally leaked, and we know that the Democrats were more than happy to use those illegally leaked tax returns to go after Donald Trump. Does that mean that the Democrats are now guilty of a crime?
Well, no, but they're unethical. But on the question of Donald Trump, if you're going to admit that Donald Trump is willing to accept and take these hacked and stolen emails and use them to his political advantage, knowing that Russia is responsible for it, the question is he acting unethically? And I don't know how you arrive at a conclusion, but
he's not.
Can I ask you a question back? Is the media and the Democrat Party acting unethically by acting and getting political advantage on the Republican Party from WikiLeaks hacks that were I would assume directed by Russia as well? I'm just asking, because this is the problem.
It depends on the aim, right?
So I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm just going to say yes. For everything, I have no clue what you're talking about. But yes.
Of course you don't. 1 second.
Your mom doesn't.
Okay, look. Rob and me both, I didn't even hear what you said, but Rob and me both admit that if anything unlawful happened here, we would be behind you guys and any prosecutions. But the problem here, a lot of the problem is that we're seeing all this unethical stuff, and then we're seeing this very convoluted, contradictory application of standards, and so that's why we keep bringing that up.
If I may,
is it possible that we can carry out the rest of this conversation without talking about Hillary Clinton or George Bush or any of these other incidents you're alluding to?
It's impossible. It's impossible.
Okay. I would like
If
to
I
stay
may,
on
if
topic,
I may,
and
can-
we only have a limited amount of time,
You
and
know,
we're barely touched the surface of.
That's your argument. That's what.
If I may, if I may,
I would like to hear Rob Noerr.
Yeah, if I may. Look, Dronetek's right that this is important, though we'll try to keep it more direct to the hypocrisy we see during the actual Trump-Russia investigation. But the point is this. We had an unprecedented situation where the FBI was spying on a presidential candidate and then later president. We had a 4-year investigation that resulted in a special counsel. We have people that have pled criminally guilty to being biased or to engaging corruptly during that investigation.
Rob,
Yeah,
I don't like these
when you say spying. Rob,
Wait. I would like to hear the totality of what he's saying before there's a response to it.
I'm not responding. I'm trying to get a clarification.
Okay, clarification.
Sure, go ahead. I'll take
I think this
clarification.
is unhonest from Rob Noerr. To be honest with you.
Rob, when you say spying, are you referring to the Carter Page?
That is what it's referring to.
No, there's more
is
than
that
that.
What else are you referring to?
Stephen Halper and Azra Turk spying on George Papadopoulos.
Wait, you mean the confidential informants?
Yeah, that's a spy.
Sorry, the consensual, the actual people with like wearing wires from the FBI. You think that's?
No, they were spies. Stephen
Okay.
Halper and Azra Turk were spies sent to spy on someone connected to Trump.
You know, the police
They also
does this
wired-
shit all the time. Do you call it spying then?
It was spying. That's what it was. It was a counterintelligence investigation. Do you call police action counterintelligence? This was a counterintelligence investigation that sent FBI and CIA assets to clandestinely listen and mislead someone, report information back to them. That's called spying. That's what it was. The semantic arguments without merit. Now, that's the clarification. So anyways, moving on to finish my point. It was an unprecedented situation that this occurred to a presidential campaign. And so when we see similar situations in the past that seem somewhat analogous, the reason Dronetek brings these up is nothing remotely like the investigation we see into Trump occurred in those situations. And so that's how we're knowing. Like every single time we could say, well, here were Russians interference. Here were Ukrainians interfering. Here's Paul Manafort working with the Podesta group. Here's situations where we've seen things like this that are analogous. Yet never did we any remotely come close to what we saw with the situation with Trump. But we will try to keep those double standards directed specifically to the Russia and Hillary investigations that were happening in the same time. That's why Dronetek is correctly bringing up those things, though.
I think that I disagree with every single premise you've made and how you. I don't like it when you go on the kind of tirade and remove, like we've unpacked a lot, some of it.
Just stop with all that and just address it.
Okay, so I guess my first point is assume that there's total impropriety with respect to the investigation and the FBI. Assume that they make their mistakes with respect to the FISA warrant. With respect, assume that there is an improper motive there. Do any of those facts undermine the determination that Russia interfered in the 2016 election?
No.
Okay. Going back, assume that they had, bad procedure in this investigation. Does that justify Trump's actions with respect to arguably obstructing justice?
Yes.
Why?
Wait, yes?
Yes, because what did Trump? Let's get to the nuts and bolts of it if we want to do obstruction. What exactly did Trump do to obstruct justice?
He fired the director of the FBI because
he was recommended by Rod Rosenstein to do such.
Right.
He told Rosenstein to come up with a recommendation.
Nadler even advised him. Even Nadler advised him.
Okay. What do you think it's conceivable that Trump fired Comey because he fucked up on the Hillary investigation?
Could be.
Come on, Rob. Be honest.
I'll tell you why Trump fired. I'll tell you why. It's probably going to be better for your argument.
Okay.
Trump fired him because he knew the investigation against him was garbage. Trump knew he was innocent, and he wanted James Comey because the media is biased and was leaking all this information and trying to smear Trump as a Russian asset. Trump was repeatedly asking Comey, can you at least publicly tell everyone I'm not under investigation? James Comey admitted over and over that actually Trump said to James Comey personally, if you find someone in my campaign did something illegal with Russia, throw the book at them. But Trump was continually pushing Comey to let the people know Trump himself is not under investigation. But he wouldn't say that. That's why Trump fired.
Why do you think it's the president's? Why do you think it's right for the president to be making any statements with respect to the investigation about what should be said by law enforcement?
Because he's innocent and he has the rights of and let me tell you why. He's innocent and he knows that he's being railroaded, as the Mueller investigation showed, and that as an American he was speaking up to his innocent. Counterpoint.
Right now we have do it. No one else gets to do that.
All right, fair. No one else does it.
So real quick, I just want to say this point.
Okay.
The president gets to say for himself and decide for himself that he's being unfairly prosecuted.
Can you think of another example of this happening, by the way?
Just real quick. Yes, he could absolutely say what he wants, right? And again, James Comey admitted that his investigation went along unimpeded. Mueller admitted that his investigation went along unimpeded. Yes, Trump taking to Twitter saying this is all garbage, or Trump privately saying I'm considering ending the Mueller report. He didn't do any of that. So yes, Trump's allowed to say that.
That doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter.
But real quick, the point that Dronetek's getting to is, so your argument is that if you or your allies are under investigation, that it's inappropriate and obstruction for you to publicly say that that investigation is corrupt or call for the end of it.
No. Saying that it's obstruction for you to fire the people investigating you.
Comey admitted just the other day that Donald Trump was not under investigation.
Yep.
Listen, that is not. So the issue isn't whether or not he in fact obstructed justice, or whether he in fact stopped the investigation or hamstrung it in some way. The question is one of institutional competency. The president doesn't get to decide for himself that the investigation is unfair or that the investigation is unfounded and waylay that investigation. We don't endow people with that authority. Imagine if a governor said, "Oh, the state prosecutors into me, they're totally corrupt, and I get to decide for myself that they're corrupt, and so I get to fire all the prosecutors who are investigating me." That's wrong from an institutional competency standpoint, from a propriety standpoint. Trump doesn't have the right to do that. So I don't think he should.
May I respond? Fair point, right? But one, your analogy isn't correct because you say that the governor is being investigated. James Comey admitted that he was never investigating Donald Trump. Secondly,
even less of a reason for Trump to get involved. If he's not personally investigated, he doesn't get to tell them not to investigate.
A lot of Democrats wanted him fired.
What are you talking about? So that's
I'm saying
that's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant.
No, it's not irrelevant. A lot of Democrats were calling for him to be fired at the time.
That's irrelevant.
So Trump fired him because Democrats were asking? Like, are you fucking kidding me? That's irrelevant.
No, but the reason that this is relevant because you're asserting just because there was an investigation into something going on that Trump had no right to fire someone that was procedurally. Now we know for a fact that actually
Trump did hire right. We're trying to establish whether or not that amounts. What we're trying to establish is whether or not that amounts to a form of obstruction of justice. When he says he fired him to obstruct, well, not obstruct, but to stop the investigation into him. That this.
What if Trump had said?
Is it going?
What if Trump had said? Yeah, I fired Comey because he's investigating me, and if anybody in my Justice Department tries to investigate, I'm going to fire them too. Would that be wrong?
Of justice. Yes.
Okay, so now let me lower it a little bit. Imagine he were to say, I fired Comey because he was investigating me and my allies.
Yes, that'd be wrong.
Isn't that what we have?
No, show me where you said that.
So Trump-Russia thing's not going away?
With Lester Holt.
What did he say? Show me the quote. His quote was, I fired James Comey because he was investigating me and my allies. That's the quote that Trump said?
Well, no, he said it was
not in
because
so many words
concerning him.
He said it was because of the Russia investigation.
He said, yeah, and I already told you, because he wasn't under investigation and he wanted James Comey to tell the press that was lying and acting as agents of the corrupt Democrat and FBI to smear Trump. He wanted James Comey to be honest and to tell the American people that Trump wasn't under suspicion or investigation.
He doesn't get to do that. Why does he get to do that?
So let me ask you this. So a counter argument then is, all right, so we know, for example, that Barr and Durham are investigating Democrat allies. Many prominent Democrats have called for Barr and Durham to be fired. Is that obstruction of justice?
Many Democrats have called on many people to be fired for many different reasons. I don't know what reason you're referring to.
I mean, they have to have the power to obstruct the investigation.
They do.
Calling on them to be fired isn't enough. If they have the power to fire them, though, and they use that power to obstruct the investigation, then yes,
it would be obstruction of justice.
So
how could it not be?
So okay, so then they are, for example, we know that people like Adam Schiff have access to information in his department that has been slow rolled out to people like Durham. Okay, but still, he's a government official. We know that he's slow rolling evidence to go to the Bond Durham investigation. Is that obstruction of justice?
Of course not.
Why?
You think the slow production of evidence by a co-equal branch of government amounts to obstruction of justice?
When they're publicly saying that it's a corrupt investigation and they want it to end, yes. If you're saying that what Trump did
isn't?
One branch of government one branch of government cannot declare an investigation by another branch of government is just corrupt and end it like that.
Yeah, but it was. But he didn't. And again, this is deflecting from the fact that even Comey testified that he was never impeded in his investigation. Rosenstein testified that the investigation
doesn't matter. Don't go back to that. Rob, that doesn't matter. I'm losing my temper here. You know it doesn't matter, right? The effect of it doesn't matter. All that, and if you follow the model penal code, if you follow United States federal statutes, what matters is the intent and the action.
The intent,
not the result.
If the intent was for Trump, there is no proof that the intent was for the Russia investigation to be ended, and that's why Trump fired Comey. There's no proof of that.
There's some evidence, right? You're saying there's no evidence.
What's the proof?
There's evidence.
Just real quick, didn't you just say like a half hour ago, well, we can't read people's intents and what's in their heart. You just said that, or what's in their mind. But now all of a sudden you know why.
In the absence of circumstantial evidence, you can't. But how do we prove intent in every case is circumstantial evidence.
Okay, so then I don't have the circumstantial evidence. Your whole
I can't hear. So let me listen to Rob.
Yeah, again, your whole answer then when we talked about the people that were agents that were saying things like we need insurance policies, #resistance. You said we can't know that bias influenced that. But now you're saying what
were they contemporaneous statements?
Other circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence.
Wait, were they contemporaneous statements at the time? It doesn't matter if you say it after. So he said resistance.
This was occurring.
But that's Peter Strzok said we need insurance policy.
No,
right.
Andrew McCabe.
Kevin Kleinsmith.
There were other agents as well.
Kevin Kleinsmith was contemporaneously.
The context with. I'm sorry. This is the second time this has come up. The problem with the context of McCabe's remarks was that the insurance policy he was referring to was getting your sources and materials in order before Trump gets elected. Like they were worried Trump was going to get elected and then nobody would talk. That was the context of that insurance policy quote. It wasn't like let's undermine Trump's presidency from the beginning by getting him charged with a crime.
Also, this is a pivot, right? So you're taking issue with my sort of assuming
pointing out the double standard.
I don't think it's a double standard. So
I disagree.
You're saying that how can I assume intentionality in one case and ignore and say I can't, look at me, I can't presume to know the intent in this other case. It's bad for me. I reject that. First of all, that those statements implicate obstruction of justice, right? So it's not just an intent. It's an intent and an actus reus, a guilty act and a guilty mind. So maybe you have a guilty mind in that case, or maybe you just have unrelated bad political thoughts or biased political thoughts. That's not a crime. It's not a thought crime, right? But it is a crime to have a guilty mind with respect to an act to obstruct justice. That's what we're focusing on. And I think there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that Trump fired Comey to affect the end of the investigation.
It did all. And there was no reason for him to think that it would. Like he had already placed in an interim FBI director before that before that happened, right?
That doesn't matter, right? Why does that matter?
Well, he said that the investigation, the interim director said at the time that the investigation was going on uninterrupted, and the investigation concluded.
Right?
What?
So like I said, it doesn't matter if the result is he wasn't successful in obstructing it. What matters is he acted with the intent to obstruct it and did something.
We don't have proof that he acted with the intent to obstruct. If he acted with
I think
the
we do.
intent to obstruct,
I think he said in Lester Holt.
He did not say, I intend to eliminate the Russian investigation.
No indictment. Tell me that.
Why was there no indictment with the president?
Because
arguably the president can't be indicted.
Yeah, that was what Mueller cited.
Nope. And you know what? That's why I was asking earlier about if you guys watched the actual Mueller hearings, because Mueller walked that back later. Did you guys know? He did.
He's saying, I don't know what this hearing is, but
he walked it back and admitted that that was not the reason that Trump was not indicted.
What did he say? Quote it. I totally. So I know the OLC opinion that he's citing.
Right, I do too. But he walked that back and said that was not the reason. The reason.
What else could be the reason?
He said it wasn't. That's all there is. I would have to assume that the reason he didn't say there was a reason is because they had no evidence. They couldn't. They could not indict him because they had no evidence to indict him with.
Okay, so the OLC opinion that a sitting president can't be indicted had nothing to do with anything?
He said, yeah, exactly. He walked it back, said that he was wrong, and I will get that for you.
No, he didn't.
I
He didn't walk back. He didn't.
Can you provide a source?
Yeah, I'll get the video and everything.
1 second. I got it right here. This is from NBC News. Here's Ted Lieu. I remember specifically, Ted Lieu was questioning Mueller right before they went in lunch break. Lieu says, I believe a reasonable person looking at these facts could conclude that all three elements of the crime of obstruction have been met. And I'd like you to ask the reason again. You did not indict Donald Trump because of the OLC opinion stating you cannot indict a sitting president, correct? Mueller says correct. Former U.S. Attorney of Southern District of Precinct.
Can you repeat that last sentence again?
You said correct, right?
Right. Well, just wait.
Okay.
MSNBC, let me see. In Mueller's opening statement that came later before the House Intelligence Committee, the former special counsel said he wanted to correct the record on his exchange with Lieu. That's not the correct way to say it, Mueller said. We did not reach a determination as to whether or not the president committed a crime. So he walked back exactly as Dronetek said. I could send you the link.
Right. He said it was not the OLC decision. The media and everybody wanted that talking point.
Wait,
which they used to this day, just like you guys used it. But this is why we call them the drive-by media, because they don't report when it gets walked back. They don't report that.
Repeat the quote, please.
Sure, no problem. Ted Lieu said, you're saying it was because Trump, because of the OLC opinion, saying you cannot indict a sitting president, correct? That is correct, said Mueller. In Mueller's opening statement that came later before the House Intelligence Committee, the former special counsel said he wanted to correct the record on his exchange with Lieu. Quote, that is not the correct way to say it, said Mueller. We did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime.
That is his formulation.
He walked it back before he did not say that.
No, do you understand how that's not walking it back? So if he said, but for the OLC opinion, I would have indicted him, it would undermine his So his whole basis of his argument is because the OLC memo exists, I cannot say one way or the other that there is or was not an indictment. But
so then your claim that he said it was because the OLC opinion was wrong.
He can't say, but for the OLC opinion, we would.
So your claim that he said that was the reason was wrong, and now you're saying, well, he super secretly means that's the reason, but he can't say it.
No, Mueller has stated that he worked with the assumption that he cannot indict a sitting president. He says it at the beginning. He said that, not me.
That doesn't mean that's not the reason that he didn't recommend.
He can't recommend it if he's working under the assumption you can't indict a sitting president.
If he can't indict, then of course, if he says he can't indict, the result can never be he indicts, right?
Look, he
said more clear than Ted Lieu says. I don't know how to make it more clear than Ted Lieu says. You did not indict Donald Trump because of the OLC, correct? Mueller says correct. Then says. That's not the correct way to say it. We did not reach a determination. So Mueller is saying, I want to correct the record. I am not saying that we didn't do this because of the OLC.
You're not understanding.
You can't get more clear than that.
You're not understanding the analytical steps.
No, that's exactly how it's been interpreted.
You are not understanding the formulation here. So he's being very careful. He's saying the OLC memo makes it so that I can't tell you one way or the other. If I were to tell you that I would have indicted but for the OLC memo, that's telling you, right? So he can't give Ted Lieu what he wants.
He spoke. Him going up to speak was to provide a correction to what he had said.
A correction in his formulation, right? Because he was wrong when he said.
Would it have been illegal for him to say the reason that we're not pursuing obstruction of justice charges, the reason we didn't indict him was the OLC? Would that have been illegal for Mueller to say?
No way would it be illegal for him to say that.
Would it have been immoral?
Arguably, under Mueller, yes, it would be immoral because if you can't indict him but you accuse him, then like the president doesn't have the opportunity to defend himself, right? He has this waiting accusation against himself, and it never gets vindicated.
I do want to give me a
fair answer.
Give me a second. I need to use the bathroom, so please be in your best behavior while I'm gone.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair, Pisco. That you honestly you could have weaseled out of that, and I think that's fair that you said it's immoral because I think that strengthens your argument more. I really do.
No, I said it's immoral.
It could be.
could be immoral, right? And I that's part of the reason why.
Don't walk it back. I think you were good to say that. Like,
there are good reasons why to suspect why a president shouldn't be indicted. I don't know where I stand on that, because it's weird the prosecutors already have tons of power, and to consider giving them more power, any prosecutor, any grand jury in any state, any place, to just like stop the government based on some indictment, I think is like too much power, right? But
okay.
I'm concerned about like the president being above the law. So I don't know my opinion on that. But all I'm saying is it's a good argument. It's immoral to come out and say, yeah, the president should have been indicted, but my hands are tied.
No, that's not what my question was. That's not what my question was. My question was, would it have been immoral to make this statement? The reason that we didn't indict an obstruction of justice is because of the OLC. Not we would have indicted, but the OLC. I'm just saying, if he literally said the reason that we didn't indict was because of the OLC, would that have been immoral for him?
It's the same. It's essentially the same thing. I mean, you've kind of shifted the formulation a little bit, but it's essentially the same thing. It's saying, but for the OLC memo, we would have indicted, and that would essentially, it would put a cloud on the president, which he can't.
Well, that's very different. It's very different, because the way you phrase it is him saying we literally would have charged him, but we couldn't, as opposed to saying we're not going to look at it because that's completely different. That's completely different.
Maybe I misunderstood then, but like what he in fact said was we can't decide one way or the other. That is not. That's not. It's kind of Weasley, because Mueller is purposely. I think a good criticism of Mueller is like, isn't that exactly what you're doing here by having this formulation between like we're not going to say one way or the other, we don't exonerate him, as opposed to like actually exonerating him and not charging him. You're kind of saying the same thing. So
the point is, there was nothing stopping. Real quick, Jerome, then there was nothing stopping Mueller from saying. In fact, he said it to Ted Lieu. He could have came back and not corrected the record. It wouldn't have been illegal. No one in the hour that he was gone, it wasn't like the media and Republicans were going, my God, we can't believe that Mueller would be so unethical as to say it. No one was making that claim. So he specifically, without prompting, corrected that. And so it seems that if that's what he really felt, there was nothing impeding him from saying that.
There's nothing.
I just feel like we can pretty much end this debate, because Robert and I both agree that if there was any wrongdoing, if he literally like colluded with Russia and did all this, then let the indictments come forward and let them all be prosecuted.
Well, he can't be indicted, but I wanted to like probe you guys to see if you'll at least commit to the idea that there was wrongdoing on the part of Trump, right?
Sure.
It was inappropriate for Trump to have campaign surrogates meet in Trump Tower to get information that they knew was coming from the Russian government. Do you guys agree with that?
If you allow me to answer, it'll be 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
One,
30 seconds.
I don't know what inappropriate means. I think that it's I don't think it's a problem. I think it's kind of morally objectionable, but I do understand that almost every national campaign is probably talking and getting dirt from people wherever they can, including foreigners. Is it slightly slimy and objectionable? Yeah, but I don't think it was a crime or anything. But the counterpoint I would make to that is it's incredible that you would say that when you didn't have a problem with Hillary Clinton's team meeting with actual Kremlin agents and getting actual dirt.
Okay.
I was gonna say, it's just like,
I mean, we disagree.
How can you ask that question when you take that position? So it's
so we disagree with that premise, right? So
can I ask you this then, Pitts? Given if you think that the Trump Tower meeting was inappropriate, Veselnitskaya, let's say that Veselnitskaya tells Trump Jr., listen, we have emails on Hillary Clinton and we hacked them and they're incredibly dirty. And Trump Jr. immediately contacts the FBI and says, my God, I just talked to a Russian that says that they have emails that prove that Hillary Clinton and her team are doing crimes and unethical things. Yeah. Would the Trump Tower meeting been okay then?
Well, yes.
It depends on the intent, right? So if the intent is for the individuals to suss out the Russians to give more comprehensive information to the government, of course that would be a different case. Yeah.
But so then,
even if they're I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, the intent.
Say that, but they basically ended up being tools of the Russians. So
who?
Well, like the Hillary campaign, they disseminated Russian disinformation.
The Hillary campaign.
I mean, come on.
Sorry,
you're going to be joking.
The Russians were helping Clinton. Like, this is the framework we're going.
I'm just saying that the Steele dossier was essentially Russian disinformation, right?
The Steele dossier was Russian misinformation. I disagree.
Which part of it? Which part of it specifically?
Oh my God!
Big ass dossier. Which part of it was Russian disinformation?
I don't think it was. So what do you? What is Russian
Steele
disinformation mean?
said that he was under the understanding that at least part of it was Russian disinformation.
Part
And
of
now
it
we
might
know-
have been, yeah, and it's up to the FBI to investigate that.
and
We're
we
not
know that
disagreeing
the
with that, but some of that Steele
Right.
dossier has also been verified.
No, it hasn't.
Like that's
Like
what,
what?
that's the issue.
What? What part
Which
was
part?
verified?
How
No,
about
it
the part where
hasn't.
Carter Page has been acting as a Russian agent?
He hasn't.
He
Well,
has.
that
He
was
was under a
definitive-
FISA. He's. I'm sorry.
Well,
He
in fairness, that's
lied about
in fairness,
like
in
having
fairness,
gone.
That's
I'm sorry,
probable cause that he
God, here we
might
go.
be right.
We're
So
like recovering old ground here.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
was found innocent. They didn't
Well-
charge him.
Like, I
Well,
can't
The
even believe you
claims
said
against
that.
Carter Page were lies.
That's
They were
like
disinformation. The
Well,
claims
one of
against
the
Michael
biggest
Cohen were
arguments are,
disinformation.
the FISA
Right, it
warrant
was
is just probable cause. It's not a determination, right?
Right.
It's that.
So then that wasn't proven true, right? We know definitively the Mueller report showed that all of those claims, the bombastic claims that were made about people like Christopher Steele and Michael Cohen meeting in Prague, none of those were proven true. None. The only thing from the dossier that was proven true was stuff that was public knowledge at the time the dossier was printed. So, for example, it was public knowledge that Carter Page had spoke at a Russian university. So the Steele dossier got that right, but then it went on to say, oh, and then he went and he talked about getting like $1.8 billion in Rosneft stock in order to steal the election for Russians. Like that was all garbage. The parts that mattered that accused Carter Page of being a spy, none of that was proven true. None.
So-
It was Russian.
So also keep in mind,
Just think about how much of this crap was used to like push the narrative early on against Trump and the media.
okay,
Like,
that's not relevant. That's not relevant to like. So
Okay.
I understand you have problems with the media,
Hey,
bias.
that's my
I hear you, and I think that there often are instances of media bias. It's undeniable, right? So I'm not
It's all
gonna.
part of it. It's all intertwined.
I don't think it's a grand narrative, and also, so I want to present to you guys what you think. It could be possible.
Can I
all
just-
this,
Yeah,
can I
I'm
just? I
sorry.
will tell you one thing. So Rob, it's possible that the whole dossier is false, right? Imagine the whole dossier is false, but the FBI just thinks it's true, right? It's not improper for the FBI to investigate. The standard for starting an investigation is like super low, right? So we shouldn't be concerned, I think, with the starting of the investigation and the process being used. If the FBI like, no, we know this information is bullshit, we know it's all wrong, we're just doing this for political ends, then you have a different case. But I think
Do you think it's a?
you're
do you think
post
before we?
rationalizing. You're looking after the fact. You're Monday morning quarterbacking like, oh, just because we found out a lot of that stuff's untrue, they should have known that at the start, and they should have never started the investigation. You see how that doesn't make sense?
Right. So let me respond to this. First off, do you think that the FBI is required to verify information before spying on an American citizen, accusing them of being a spy?
They are required to be scrupulously accurate in their.
But they weren't. They
warrant
didn't verify it.
application.
We now know that. We
So-
now know that they weren't.
Okay, but remember the that doesn't mean it's levels of generality, right? So I'm accurate about the intel, but the intel's wrong, right? That could be a plausible case, right? So the CI told me that they did something wrong, but the CI is wrong, right? So that's different, right?
It's the opposite, right? Because here's what happened. They received information that they knew was from an
They
untrustworthy
have to know
source.
it was wrong, right? So
But listen, no, that's different, right? Right? Because you just said they have to verify or make good faith attempts to verify
correct.
information.
Yeah, that's where they fucked up. That's where they fucked up.
Okay, so then you're admitting that it was wrong. They never attempted to
Wait,
verify.
Hang on, the warrant process was fucked up. I mean, no one denies that. We said it in our opening. I didn't say the opening because I didn't get to it, but LSP said that in his opening remarks that there were improprieties in the FISA warrant process. That is clear. You know that I will not deny that. But the problem is equating that warrant application process, so the whole investigation, that impropriety, which was only on the FBI, not the whole Justice Department, and equating the Carter Page story to the entirety of the Russia investigation. That's wrong. That has to be wrong.
Okay, listen. One, we could get to that in a second. But what you said when we were just discussing this, you said, well, it's basically Monday morning quarterbacking. It's not improper for them to use information that later turns out to be false.
Correct.
And I said, but don't they have to make attempts to verify? You say, yes, they have to. I say, okay, they didn't. That's what's wrong about this. Okay, that's a pretty big F up. And because let me ask you this, if you admit that's the case, you think that it's important that our Bill of Rights protections are important. That's why we have a place, right? That's supposed to, you have to go to a special court to be able to spy on an American, correct?
Well, right. So I don't know how the FISA process has been
But the idea of it is that, right?
So FISA is just in the United States, right? So everything United. Yeah.
Don't you think the threshold for that should be much higher when we're talking for presidential campaigns?
No,
Especially when the information you're getting is from one that the very organization getting the information is alleging is a Russian spy who wants to hurt U.S. national security.
So how are you supposed to find out how valid the information is without a minimum investigation?
Yeah.
This is like, so what are they supposed to do differently?
Verify the information before spying on a presidential campaign?
For
example, what you've just given real quick, what you've just given the rationale for is any rumor that the Trump administration gets, even if it's from someone that they think wants to damage U.S. national security, they're then given the green light to go ahead and spy on anyone they want.
No.
How would they know that information is not true?
Rob,
I want to hear a response.
I'm getting really mad because did you hear me say that? Did you hear
me say that? That's what LSD just said.
No, that's not what he said. You think that, first of all, an investigation isn't equivalent to a warrant. Of course, I don't think that the standard for applying for a warrant, whether it's a FISA warrant or a regular criminal warrant, isn't some unsubstantiated rumor. The standard is very clear in the Constitution. Probable cause, and with some exceptions for stop and frisk, and warrants with exceptions where it's not reasonable to get a warrant. So I just want that to be clear. I don't think that the standard should be just unsubstantiated rumors. There's tons of court cases about it. So that's misrepresentation. But to start investigation, of course, there has to be some basis in it, and they can rely on hearsay. They can rely on rumors or whatever it takes if they think there's something to it. It's a propriety of the fucking executive branch.
Okay, but what we see is it wasn't just starting an investigation. They immediately sought to get wiretaps on someone connected to.
What do you mean immediately? So the first thing they did is they ran through databases and they got everyone's names and criminal records and people they thought were involved. That's not even a search, right? That's not even a search. That's not a Fourth Amendment moment. There's no.
Well, here's what I mean. If before we get into legalese, here's what I mean by immediately. James Comey himself has admitted that they used that information to obtain a FISA warrant before they sought to verify it. That's what I mean by immediately.
So they thought they were thinking about the FISA warrant process, I think, in like September or August, and they got it in October. I don't know, but in July, when the investigation started in July, and the first couple weeks, they were like pulling names and doing shit that wasn't even a search, right? And the question is, of course they would do this. Wouldn't you think that they would be negligent not to investigate these reports that Russia...
They didn't investigate. Before they investigated this information and sought to verify it, they used it to spy on a presidential campaign.
You keep repeating like your talking point. What I'm saying is, imagine you're the FBI in this moment and you get a report, whether it's from... So it started because of Papadopoulos, right? That's at least that they claim, and then what the IG has said, is that it started with Papadopoulos, that the Russians have dirt on Clinton's. That links with their information that the DNC server was just hacked. It was announced at the same time. These things converge. Wouldn't you have to be like the most negligent, reckless fucking intelligence organization in the world not to start investigation?
Starting an investigation is different than getting a FISA warrant to spy on it. Now listen, real quick, let me say,
they were right to start the investigation, right? They were right to start the investigation, right?
No. Then let me tell you what. Right. Let me tell you why. Because investigating a presidential campaign needs to have a higher threshold. So let me say this as a counterpoint. Then we know that intelligence agents actually were so troubled by the fact in September 7th of 2016 that they'd received information that John Brennan also had received and briefed Barack Obama on, that Hillary Clinton was seeking to smear Trump as a Russian asset colluding with Russia in order to get the FBI off of her email investigation, her server investigation. So much so was these intelligence agents concerned that they directly went to James Comey and told him to investigate this. Do you think it would be incumbent on the director of the FBI to take information that one candidate who had paid for the opposition research that you're using was credibly being accused, or there was information that the FBI was aware that she was intentionally trying to malign Trump as a Russian colluder? Would it have been criminal for the FBI to not investigate that?
First of all, there's no criminal standard for not investigating. If you want to try to like,
there's no remedy. I'm not saying my bad, mischoice of words. The exact same standard you said. It would be incredibly negligent for them not to do it.
To look into a political rival maligning another political rival?
No. A political. You've taken evidence that you know is opposition research from Hillary Clinton.
You don't know
that evidence.
Now you're Monday morning quarterbacking. You're in the
No.
dark, right? They don't
They
get
knew.
they don't get the dossier. They don't get the dossier until later. They start the investigation
Whoa,
before the dossier.
whoa. I'm talking about in September.
Well, no,
Right?
we're talking about. I asked you, should the investigation even been started?
Well, okay, fine.
You said
fine.
no.
So, fine. Listen, why did the investigation start? Who was the first person connected to Trump that was accused that started the investigation?
According to the Inspector General Papadopoulos.
Right. Okay. So what's the story on Papadopoulos? Stop me if you think I'm wrong. George Papadopoulos was talking to a Maltese professor named Joseph Misfit somewhere in the UK, I believe. This supposed professor was a Russian spy. This is the narrative from the FBI and Mueller's
narrative. Yeah.
Misfit was a Russian spy, and he's the one who started this all. He told George Papadopoulos, "I would like you to meet with this Russian who has dirt on Hillary Clinton." Papadopoulos then goes and meets with this Russian. The Russian says, "We have emails that show."
Wait. Go back 3 sentences.
Sure. Go ahead. Tell me where I'm wrong.
So who says to Papadopoulos, go talk to this person?
Misfit.
Okay. So who reaches out to Papadopoulos?
It was a lawyer, or there was some sort of lawyer that first did, and then a woman. It was like a movie star, or something, or some sort of entertainer that then put Papadopoulos in connection.
Are you just getting to they entrapped Papadopoulos? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm just giving the story. You tell me if I'm wrong. Did I say anything that was?
There's things that look like that kind of involved in that.
Well,
we're just doing the meat and bones right now. Then we'll get to it. So right, Misfit.
Meat and bones sound like okay. I wasn't.
I'm just trying to get a baseline. Misfit tells Papadopoulos, "I want to get you in connection with this Russian that has dirt on Hillary." Papadopoulos talks to this Russian. This Russian says, "We have emails that show Hillary's crooked," or something like that. Papadopoulos then goes back to the Trump's team and says, "Hey, should we pursue trying to get this?" Trump's team says, "No, let it alone." Yeah. Papadopoulos then later goes and talks to Alexander Downer, who's someone who's worked with the Clinton campaign or with the Clinton Foundation, who's an Australian diplomat. Supposedly, Papadopoulos gets drunk and says to Downer, "Hey, I talked to a Russian that says that he has emails about Hillary Clinton." That's the start of the investigation.
Yeah. What? So investigation has been started for like much less, right? You know the standard for starting
investigating. So that resulted in people. No, just wait. That is exactly what they said. So
there was also the DNC hack that just happened.
So
but what does that have to do with investigating Trump's team? Of course, they're going to investigate the DNC hack.
Let's put on our hat right now, our Inspector Gadget hat, right? And there was just a big hack of the of the DNC servers. There's reports of from other foreign intelligence operations that Russians are interfering in the election. We find out that a Trump campaign advisor, we don't know what his role is in the campaign. We're just we don't know any of this shit, is talking about dirt from the Clinton campaign. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. Let's start an investigation. What's wrong with that?
Okay, well, we also know at the exact same time in late July, right before Crossfire Hurricane started, that the FBI and Comey became aware that Hillary Clinton was going to try to smear Trump as being involved with those hacks.
So what? What?
So no need to investigate that. But secondly, fine. I don't even. Let's even say that the investigation. Okay. So let's say then, just for the sake of argument, let's say fine, they started the investigation. Now, you will admit that the crucial character, other than Papadopoulos in this, the initial Russian spy was a man by the name of Joseph Mitsin, correct?
Correct. That's the initial contact.
Okay. Now, did the FBI ever interview Joseph Mitsin?
I don't know if they had access to him.
Yes, they did. In fact, you could read the 302. It's 2 pages. In that 302, did the FBI ever once ask Mitsin about being a Russian spy or anything like that?
I don't know.
No, they didn't. Now, just real quick. Let's go.
Yes, I'm a spy.
All right, but they didn't ask anything remotely leading to that. Now, next question.
Start of the investigation. We're only talking about the start of the investigation.
This is the crucial question. So we know that Mueller Now,
what happened after?
Was Mueller, right? Excuse me. What was Mueller tasked with?
You would never interview him unless you start an investigation, right?
What was Mueller tasked with?
Mueller was tasked under certain federal regulations provided for
Rosenstein scope memo.
I hate to cut this off, but we've been going on for 3.5 hours, and I can see from LSP, I can see from Dronetek. Oh yeah, 2.5 hours, not 3.5.
Can I just 5 more minutes to get to the end of this line of questioning?
You know what? We'll do 5 more minutes and then we're gonna do outros. But it
Okay,
has been going on for a
just
very
let
long
me, because
time.
and I think Pisco's answering in good faith, and I think this is important. Did you know, I'll ask this way. Did you know that the FBI claimed that Joseph Misfit lied to them 3 times when they interviewed him?
I think that was in the IG report, but I don't remember.
No, it was in the Mueller report.
Was it the Mueller report? Okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
it was. That's where it came from. So Jim Jordan discusses this with Mueller when Mueller's in front of him.
Okay.
Now, would you also acknowledge that the reason George Papadopoulos was charged with a crime was for lying to the FBI?
That's correct.
And same with Flynn, right? For lying to the FBI.
That's correct.
So Mueller was taking it serious when people lied to the FBI, correct?
That's correct.
Why didn't Mueller choose Joseph Misfit, who lied 3 times to the FBI, who Mueller's own argument was the original Russian spy that started this all?
There are a lot of reasons potentially for that. So a charging decision, for one, it could be the case that you want this person operating still, right? If you want to surveil him and track him through means, it doesn't help if he's in prison. So perhaps there's a national security interest in not charging him. That's one reason. 2 is maybe you don't get him, you don't care, you don't want to. Maybe he is an informant after all. Maybe CIA have him in a black site somewhere that hasn't been seen for a while. I don't know, right? That could be a reason. There could be tons of reasons behind charging decisions that I can't speak to, right?
The reason they didn't is because they're full of it. Because we now know that through all of the circumstantial evidence we see around this, everyone connected to Joseph Misfit in his life said they were absolutely shocked that they assumed that he was actually working with British and U.S. intelligence. The university that he was in, he was constant engagement with U.S. and British intelligence. He was also engaged in Italian intelligence when he would go to his home.
So it's entrapment. Wait, so you're saying it's entrapment?
Right.
So, I mean, why did you dodge that initially? If you think
I was outlining the original, just the base facts before we talk.
Think about what that means. That means that the Justice Department is corrupt. And I know this will be my last thing, and then Dylan can whatever. You're saying the Justice Department is corrupt. They planted this guy to frame Papadopoulos to start an investigation to spy on Trump. That's what you're alleging. It's a deep
Yes, I'm saying 3 days after Hillary Clinton, 3 days after we have evidence that Hillary Clinton suggested that they framed Donald Trump as colluding with Russia, the FBI immediately started to do that and started to wind down the Hillary investigation.
I don't think it was a deep state conspiracy, but that's what that is. That's a deep state conspiracy. And maybe
I would say that makes more sense. I would say that makes more sense that Mueller neglected to indict or even remotely go after or even try to detain the key spy in the Russia. So instead of going after the key person that was involved in allegedly this mastermind conspiracy to interfere in the 2016 election,
no. He's not the mastermind, right? He's not the mastermind. Don't overstate your case. Like you have some true facts with you. Don't overstate it, right?
Okay.
So you're overstating it. No one's saying he's the mastermind. He's saying the first contact.
Okay, so the first contact, that none of this interference would have been possible without. Instead of indicting that, he chose to indict Russian trolls and American heroes like Flynn for the same for lying.
There could be other reasons for not charging. I gave you some genuine reasons. I don't know what else you want, but I know we're over time. So Dylan, I'll
sure, yeah.
I'm sure we can have.
I'm sorry, Dylan.
I love this conversation. I could
too.
go in circles for hours. So yeah, I'll leave it to Dylan.
Okay, while you two could go for hours, I can only go so long. I woke up at 3 a.m. because I just went to sleep after I found out I streamed it yesterday. So I am going to wrap this up with you all. Going for we're gonna have very short closing statements, 1 minute closing statements. Then we're gonna raid into somebody else, and I'm gonna go take a nap and figure out what I'm gonna do for Thursday because
Can I just say follow Dylan Burns, subscribe to him, please.
I agree.
He's a man. I think he has some of the best fucking panels and demands good fucking arguments from people. So kudos to you, Dylan Burns.
100%.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's your closing statement?
No.
Okay, we'll start with you then.
Okay. I think that the Russian investigation was started properly to target a legitimate national security interest, namely Russian involvement into our elections, which is a vital source of American democracy and really important to Americans. I think Trump had impropriety with respect to the interference. Some of it potentially criminal with respect to his obstruction. Some of it potentially not criminal and just unethical with respect to quote unquote collusion or coordination or aiding and abetting. That said, there are improprieties in the FISA warrant process and they need to be addressed. I don't think everything that was brought up by Rob is completely baseless and from Dronetek with respect to the media. So I think this is a conversation worth having, but it's important, I think, to do it step by step and to agree on the facts and the premises of each claim. And thank you for watching this. I stream occasionally on my channel. If you want to follow me, Pisco95, give me a follow. Thank you.
Wonderful. Next, we're going to throw it over to Rob Noerr.
So, yeah, thanks so much for the conversation and for hosting, Dylan. Thanks for everyone that was here. Thanks, Dronetek, for being on my side. Appreciate it. So what I wanted to point out is I think that it's quite clear that there's two things that we see occurring on the other side. And I'm not saying it's because they're bad actors. Maybe they truly believe it. But oftentimes when we ask for specific evidence on something, they just say, well, we can't have access to it, but that's what everyone says in these reports. Therefore, it must be true. That's not evidence. And we see oftentimes, as Dronetek correctly pointed out, that we've seen these officials lie to us before. We see that they did it exactly as the IG report, 17 errors and omissions and hundreds of Woods procedures that were violated in the context of just the Carter Page situation. I also think that you could see that we could show that this is corrupt because, like our opponents, the FBI, the Democrats, the media, constantly, they say we have to investigate all foreign interference, yet every time it benefits Hillary, then all of a sudden it was, oh, well, we don't, there's a reason for that interference, it's okay. We could see this occur over and over again. The people that were supposedly crucial FBI or Russian spies are let off the hook. The people that were actual people that were Russian spies alleged, they took their information without verifying it to spy on Trump's campaign. Through the two hot roll, as Bill Binney has showed, they would be able to, through spying on Carter Page, spy on the entire Trump campaign. This was a coup. All of the evidence, if you read the Mueller report, shows there was no evidence, even in the context of this clue that any Trump supporter or anyone in his campaign did anything illegal conspiring with Russians to affect the 2016 election. And more evidence is going to come, so stay tuned. It'll be fun to look back on this debate in a couple months.
Wonderful. I'm going to throw it now over to Dronetek.
Mute.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, sir. Okay, so sorry, I always forgot I had to do a button here, but thank you, Dylan, for having me here, and I definitely recommend all my viewers go over and check him out, as well as Pisco and LDS and Robert as well. You guys already know him, but all these guys are very good faith, and I felt like we had a pretty substantive debate here. I would just say that, you know, I basically blame the media and all the a lot of this. Some stuff I was going to say here. 1 second. So, I mean, you said like this potential crime. There was no potential crime because there was no indictments, and there won't be after Trump gets out. I don't know. That's pretty much it. I'm done, guys. I'm sorry. I'm tired.
No problem. I'm tired too. I'm
actually
on board.
had something, but I forgot it, and I'm just.
I'm on board too. I'm gonna throw it over to LSP.
Hi. Thanks, Dylan, for having me. Thanks, everyone, for showing up. I hope you all had fun. It's no secret that I wasn't particularly satisfied with the conversation. I felt like we chased like a ton of like really silly distractions or outright misrepresentations, like a judge lambasting the Mueller team for no evidence of a Russian troll farm, when actually, well, the judge said no such thing. The Department of Justice was dropping charges to stop them from revealing sensitive information, stuff like that. Or Andy McCabe, he's talking about getting an insurance policy to coup Donald Trump. Well, no, actually, he's talking about securing evidence before it becomes unavailable, like stuff like that. We wound up chasing a lot of that, and when we weren't chasing that, we had to like explain why we're investigating Donald Trump or why we're investigating Russian interference when we should be investigating China or Burisma or Hillary Clinton, or why the Democrats didn't mind WikiLeaks. Again, stuff like this. Questions were barked at us that we try to answer only before having our answers like immediately interrupted with like a declaration of what we actually believe. We're asked for evidence that we can't possibly have. Facts were grossly misrepresented several times. Nobody's proven a coup attempt. The IG report and the Senate Intel Committee report both conclude the same thing. There's no evidence of political bias in the investigation, and that it had the necessary authorized purpose, and that its findings were valid. And what are those findings? Russia interfered in the election, and Trump was open to that assistance, and they did it to hurt Hillary Clinton. and that the investigation was valid and sound, right? Those are the facts, and we're here to debate those facts. So don't take my word for it. Take the word of Trump's own IG and the Republican team, investigation team, and the Republican Senate. Take their word for it, because they all conclude that this is all true as well. Everything else, in my opinion, was just a silly distraction that's totally valid for another debate, but just not this debate.
Appreciate